14th, 4 p.m. And I'll go ahead and get this meeting started. Can I get, oh, actually, I'm sorry. I'll do a roll call of Planning Commission members present, please. Howard Tritz.
Here.
Abby Dahlman.
Here.
Bryce Ehrlich.
Here.
Aaron Palin.
Here.
And Lupi Bobadilla.
Here.
Great, thank you. County Commissioners, do we have Sarah Mudge?
Present, and Commissioner Marcel is unable to make the meeting tonight.
Okay. And Commissioner Fiedler?
Here.
Okay, I thought I saw you. Okay. Do we have any changes or additions to the agenda this evening? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on. I think we need to table minutes for May 24th because I don't think we have those. And that brings us to new business. This is a 3-part application, all for a proposed Taco Bell. There's file number 21-03, which is a minor subdivision application, file number 21-04, conditional use permit, and file number 21-05, a site plan review. Because these files, all three, very strongly intertwine with each other, we are going to be reviewing the information and data for all three of them at kind of the same time, although motions will need to be made separately for each of the files. Hopefully that makes sense. I'm going to start by just reading kind of a process of how the evening's going to go. Thank you all for joining us this evening. If you'd like to speak tonight during the public input portion of tonight's joint hearing, please use the chat box and send a message in there by just stating your name and your address, mailing address. That chat box will remain open until the applicant's presentation begins, at which time it will be closed. However, there will be still an opportunity to raise your hand during public input portion of the meeting for anyone that joins the meeting late or anybody who decides later that they would like to speak. Other than those names and addresses, please do not put any public comment in the chat section as we are reserving that for the actual public comment portion of tonight's meeting. The Lake County Planning Commission and the Board of County Commissioners will now conduct a joint public hearing. This statement I am reading shall be incorporated into and made part of the record on these proceedings. The PC and BOCC have jurisdiction to conduct a joint public hearing on a conditional use permit under section 3.6.1, a minor subdivision under section 3.17, and a site plan review under section 3.15. The purpose of this hearing is to consider whether the applications should be approved. In considering that matter, the Commission will address the approval criteria as set forth in the Land Development Code. The procedure to be followed in this hearing will be as followed. Number 1, the members of the Commission and/or board will disclose if they've had any ex parte communications. 2, the applicant will make their presentation. 3, county staff will then present the staff report and any recommendations. After that, any other persons either supporting or opposing the application may present their evidence. Such presentation will be limited to 3 minutes, and we ask everyone to be considerate and respectful. Supporting and opposing witnesses may be questioned by the Commission and the board. Once that questioning is concluded, no further questioning is permitted unless granted by the chair. The applicant may then present any rebuttals evidence. The parties and witnesses are asked not to submit redundant, irrelevant, or cumulative evidence. If someone has already made the point that you wish to make, simply say so. Chair will also require that all comments be made to the Planning Commission and to the board, and that there be no dialogue between the applicant and/or members of the audience. At the conclusion of the evidentiary portion of this hearing, the chair will entertain a motion to close the evidentiary portion of the hearing, and the Commission will discuss and weigh the evidence. Then there will be a motion to close the discussion phase of the joint public hearing. The Board of County Commissioners will then leave the meeting, and the chair of the PC will entertain a motion on the application. The motion may take the form of one of the following recommendations. 1, approve the application with no conditions. 2, approve the application with recommended conditions. 3, approve the application with newly identified conditions. 4, table a application to a date certain, requiring additional conditions be met to consider the application. 4, deny the application. The planning director shall make a record of any substantial discussion on the motion and include that in the record with the recommendations of the commission. The commission's recommendation will be in the form of a statement of motion. Are there any objections to the jurisdiction of the commission or the form or substance of these proceedings? Okay, hearing none, I will ask each planning commission member and each county commissioner to disclose any ex parte communication they may have had on this file. And maybe I will just do a quick roll call just to make it quick and easy. Howard Tritz, do you have any ex parte communication to disclose?
None.
Okay, Abby Dahlman,
Nope.
Bryce Ehrlich,
None.
Aaron Palin.
None.
Okay, Lupe Bobadilla,
None.
Commissioner Mudge,
Nope, I've received the same public comments that we all have received.
okay, and Commissioner Fiedler.
None. I'll just say I had one discussion with a constituent about where to find the relevant criteria, but we very carefully didn't discuss any substance of the specific application.
Great. And I have had a couple of inquiries too as to how the public hearing would go and such, but nothing's about the actual details of the application. Okay, and from here, what we'll do, again, I don't see, I do see one name in the chat. Again, anybody who's wishing to have an opportunity to speak public comment, please enter your name and address in there, and we'll get that, and that'll close here in just a few minutes. And then if you want to speak and your name was not shared, we'll just ask you to raise your hand later on in that portion. At this time, we'll go ahead and ask the applicant to go ahead and give their presentation. And I'm not sure who's presenting for the applicant, but if you could please state your name and how you represent the applicant, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon, commissioners and Lake County community members. My name is Ryan Sass. I am with Plaza Street Partners, and we have been contracted by the applicant and owner, Turner Management Company, also as you've seen, Fred Turner, to oversee the project throughout the development process. We are a real estate development company that oversees quick service restaurant development throughout the country. With me on the call today, we also have Fred, Bob, Lena, and Alex with the operations team, also known as the franchisee, as well as our engineer, Rachel. Fred Turner, the owner of Turner Management Company. It's kind of the development arm of Taco Colorado, which, as I mentioned, is the franchisee for the proposed Taco Bell. He has been in operations for over 37 years in the Rocky Mountains. And then Bob Soliday on the call is the CFO of Taco Colorado. And then we also have Lena Chavez. She is the president and also a local resident of Leadville, as well as Alex, who is a manager of a nearby Taco Bell in Frisco, and also a local resident of Leadville. And lastly, Rachel Patton is on the call. She's with Harris Cocker Smith, who is our representative with the civil engineer on this project. Each of us have been dedicated to this project and working with Paul and Ann with the County Building Land Use Department since and prior to our pre-application meeting in January of this year. The proposed Taco Bell development we are proposing will meet the Lake County Development Code as well as the guidelines in the County Comprehensive Plan. We are aware of the comments received from the consulting engineer SCH as well as the staff report issued, and we fully intend to address those comments. The proposed development will greatly improve the appearance and use of the property to better serve the surrounding community. The site has been vacant and in poor condition for numerous years, and our plan the plan for this proposed Taco Bell will include a mountain motif design with pitched roof and features that will fit into the surrounding architecture. It won't appear to look like the prototypical Taco Bell you'll see if you put it into Google. So I want to make sure the commissioners and community is aware of that. The restaurant will also employ numerous, up to 20, potentially 30 local individuals in part-time and full-time capacity to assist in the operations to serve the Leadville community, as well as tourists traveling along Highway 24. Average sales per unit for Taco Bell in the United States is approximately 1.5 million. This will generate a significant sales tax benefit for the county. And then although Taco Bell is an international brand that everyone is aware of, and we understand the community may have some opposition to bringing in a national brand, we want to make sure it's known that this particular franchisee are Colorado natives that have been operating in this area for decades. And as I mentioned before, both Lena and Alex are Leadville residents. So they'll be close knit with the community and make sure that your voices are heard and that the restaurant serves their needs. Overall, we are very excited about this opportunity to develop the property, and we believe it will be a great asset to the community. We appreciate everyone's time hearing these 3 applications for the site plan, conditional use permit, and subdivision that will help make the development possible. Myself and all the individuals that I previously mentioned are available to answer any questions that you and the public may have this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. Is there another party that wants to present the substance of the application, or did you want us to just jump right into staff report?
Our understanding is that staff would be presenting. I'm happy to share my screen and share the plan if needed, but it's my understanding that was under the staff's purview, but I'm happy to do that now as well if needed.
Yeah, and it's up to you guys. In this application, it was, just kind of discuss that perhaps making the presentation to the community as far as, what the plans are for it, what it looks like, if there's anything you want to address on the application that you want special notice on. We just wanted to give you that opportunity if there was something in there that you wanted us to take note of, and then staff, and then obviously there will be opportunity to rebut or answer any of the concerns that staff brings up in their staff report as well. But if there was just anything that you wanted to kind of say, hey, this is the overall plan, kind of what it looks like and what our thoughts are moving forward, we just wanted to give you the opportunity to do that.
Okay. Yes, I can share these with you. Okay, sorry, getting ready to share my screen here. Okay. Can everyone see? Oh, you cannot see that. So I don't think.
We can see the sketch plan A4.0.
Oh, you can. Okay, perfect. So this is a black and white version, but as you can see, we're showing a pitched roof as well as vertical features to accent the entries and stone along the bottom. And I'll continue here as a reference to see each side of the building. So as you can see, it's not a prototypical Taco Bell you might see, and we've adjusted this to ensure that it meets the community and county's requirements to fit in with that architectural style. And then here is kind of the color scheme that you'll be seeing as well, so you can kind of get a colored version of what that may look like.
Great, thank you. I think that's really helpful.
Okay. And then I can also bring up the site plan as well for everyone to take a look, and I will share that here quickly. I apologize if I had known I would have had this ready in advance, so.
No worries.
Okay. And here is our civil site plan. This is the one that the staff report and comments we previously received are on. So this is not final and comments still need to be addressed, but it shows you the general layout of the building. So in reference, up here to the north is Highway 24, where my cursor is would be the coffee shop, and what is now the North Poplar Street is here, and Mountain View is here on the left side of my screen. So we're proposing an entrance off of Mountain View, and as well as into Poplar, and people would enter the drive-through here on the north side, and then be able to exit. I do want to point out that the drive-through stacking would continue around the building here as to avoid any potential congestion that would maybe of a concern, because it would not be pointing to the direction of Mountain View Drive, and we wanted to make sure that everyone was aware of that and that importance. We have area here in green space for landscaping, and here along the east side of the property or west side of the property, and areas to the south for snow storage. I will point out that the applicant and owner owns this adjacent piece. There are no plans for that adjacent piece at this time. And our traffic study currently shows the worst case scenario of it being developed as a restaurant with a drive-through, although due to the size, it may not be developed as that. Could be something with a lot lower volume of traffic. So I wanted to point that out as well. Other than that, I think that's all I have to show you guys today.
Thank you. That's really helpful.
Heather, this is Bob Solody. Are we able to add some more comments, or how would you like the?
Yep, absolutely. For the applicant. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I'm Bob Solody. I've been involved with Fred for 27 years, developing restaurants and up there in the mountains. He's been there for a long time. If you could put that back up again, please, Ryan. I wanted to point out a couple other things that we wanted to design into the site plan because we're familiar with traffic flows and things that back people up and get them upset. When we first looked at this site, it was of concern to ours because the first site plan idea had the egress and egress, which you'll see along the eastern side of the top of the picture. It had that over very close to the Poplar / Mountain Avenue intersection there. And we specifically asked to have it brought back to the south so that there couldn't be any, I guess you would say, traffic jam, for lack of a better term. Another thing that we did when we looked at the site plan is you'll notice that the parking on that east side is set back quite a bit. At first, we were told there wasn't going to be any improvements along Poplar. And then over the last 6 months, things have kind of changed, and people are certainly talking about improvements to that road. So we have left room at the east side there. If there is going to be a dedication, it shouldn't affect the entirety of the site plan. So when those things are formalized and we get the money allocated, or I should say budgeted or proposed, we've reviewed the SIA agreement, and that is one of the exhibits as to what that amount would be and how that could be pro rata shared along the other parcels that have frontage along Poplar. The other one other point that came up was along Mountain. there along the north part of the property. You'll notice that our property line is also set back quite a bit. There is a culvert there that the county owns. So there's plenty of room if they need to expand Mountain View. Again, it wouldn't affect our site plan. As far as traffic flow around our site, if you'll notice down at the northwest corner of our site, coming off of Mountain View, our egress and ingress there, that little bit farther up, bottom of the picture, bottom on the left, yep, to the left there, coming off of Mountain View, we've made sure that any traffic coming off can completely come onto the property as they circle the building counterclockwise to get into the drive-through. So there shouldn't be any traffic issues there, and the traffic report doesn't outline any. So we've tried to, look at the site from our experience of working with counties and cities, as well as actual experience operating these, that this would be the best traffic flow to minimize any impact on Poplar or as well as Mountain. So another thing that Ryan hinted on was we do want to have a very attractive building. We call it the mountain motif. You've seen it with the rocks and the high peaked roofs. We do spend extra money, as you know, in that area for low bearing roofs. We are installing 3 boilers for safety reasons. Our entire drive-through will be heated. So all the way from the beginning where you start the order, there's the cursor, all the way around the building to the far end is going to be heated. Again, from our experience in running mountain restaurants, that's a value that is certainly expensive in the beginning, but has long-term both safety and best of operations rules. The other thing is, if you notice on the east side of the building, the sidewalks coming up to the restaurant, as well as along the parking spaces there, will also be heated. So again, it's a safety feature we've realized in our other mountain restaurants, and we've gone through some extra costs to make sure that those are instilled. As Ryan also expressed, part of this whole project was getting the entire parcel, which was 1.5 acres. We wanted to make sure that the southern parcel there also had good ingress and egress. And you'll note we haven't put any planters between the parcels because we want to make sure whatever is designed for that parcel, laid out, approved. We're still inquiring as to what other uses are needed in the county, but you'll see we aren't putting any planters or things there that would congest that site or block any of the traffic patterns around the restaurant. As far as the drive-through, we know that's critical in every town. Unfortunately or unfortunately, with the design of our site plan here, there will be good traffic flow. One of the other good things is, unfortunately, during the pandemic, when a lot of the restaurant space was closed, we had the opportunity to keep our drive-throughs open, and we really were able to service the community. Just from a reference perspective, the other 4 restaurants we have in mountain communities, our sales revenue didn't grow over last year, but it remained flat from the year before. So it just kind of gives you an idea of how much volume was done through a drive-through and how society has changed, whether it's convenience where you don't want to unload everybody, all the kids and everybody, and go in, whether it's convenient just for you to grab and go, or if it's a health reason that came up the last year, but how critical that drive-throughs can be. The other aspect is it is critical that that gets approved for this site. It is a corporate requirement from Taco Bell that we have a drive-through. So that's one of the critical features. We also know that the subdivision is up for application, or an application has been submitted. That obviously is important, and we've taken that into our design perspectives here. And of course, the site plan. We've been through probably, if not 8 or 10 site plan drawings to make it fit the best it can. So I think that's all I have to say. Fred, would you like to add something, or Lena?
Yes, this is Fred. I also wanted to add that Taco Bell Corporate requires us to keep a certain standard, and that certain standard requires a complete remodel every 10 years and potentially a full, complete building replacement every 20 to 25 years. So once we have been in a successful town, we really pay attention to what the building looks like, the landscaping and so forth. We try to keep first class. And I think if you see our other restaurants in Frisco, Eagle, Glenwood Springs, and Rifle, we do very well. We contribute a lot to the counties and the towns we're in as well. But as far as the site plan, that's about all the comments I have. We did spend a lot of additional money to change the architecture, which we also did again in all the stores except for really Rifle. That was not a requirement there. Excuse me, but in Frisco, Eagle, and Glenwood Springs, it was quite extensive what we had to do to make it, just change the building so it fits into the city and the county of the Leadville and Lake County. Thank you.
Lena, would you like to add some comments? I know you're, as president of Taco Colorado Corporation, involved on the day-to-day activities as well, Alex.
Yes, I put it to speak later in the during this public hearing, but I would like to really stress that yes, Taco Bell, it's a national brand, but we are a small local business. We only have 4 restaurants, and we're deeply involved in the community. So we help in boys and girls, kids clubs in all the markets that we're in. We are the members of Chamber of Commerce. We participate in and sponsoring high school sports and high school graduations. We donating money to local food banks. We help in senior centers. So there is a lot that we can do for the community, and we can do a lot for Leadville community as well. So there is a lot of money that we will be spending to help kids and Leadville, you know, any type of Leadville fun fests or family fests or boom days that coming up. We are all the time happy to be involved and support all local events.
For me, I'm Alex. I'm the RGM at Frisco. I've been a resident in Leadville for 30 years. And growing up, you know, it's something that I would say it'll bring extra activity for the youth. I have 3 kids here in Leadville. So, you know, probably when they get out from school, it'll be like a nice activity. I have many students that work for me up in Frisco. You know, from the routines, you know, make them, you know, do something nice and special, you know, with their friends or family members. But yeah, I support.
Yeah, it would be a good place even to hang out for the high school kids, because when I drive through Leadville during the evening hours, I just see a bunch of cars with the kids hanging out on like dark parking lots, you know, and they don't have a good place to go, you know, and our dining rooms are going to be open late. It's going to be bright. It's going to be new building. It's going to be nice. So I think it's going to be a great place for the community and for the kids to come.
Well, thank you all. I think that was very helpful information. I appreciate that. Paul, I will hand it off to you. Paul Clarkson's our Planning Commission staff, and he will kind of go through a quick review of the staff report. You don't obviously need to read it line for line for us, because hopefully we've all read it. But yeah, if there's some things you'd like to call out and kind of generally overview, that would be helpful. Thanks, Paul.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wanted to say that I think we ran into several concerns regarding compliance with county code on a number of items, as well as the fact that we're going to be looking at some dedication of right-of-way from the applicant, which is going to reduce the size of the lot. And I think it may not seem like a lot, but I think that the lot coverage of impervious surface is pretty much already at the maximum. I think we can ask Rachel Patton if that's actually the case or not. But we're most concerned with the ability of the site planning to actually comply with the reduced size of the lot as a result of the conditions that we want to put on the property. That includes right-of-way dedications. I think that the code compliances and the dedications that we're looking at present difficulties that Rachel Patton has responded to in a letter that I believe that you've all received, that it is every bit the applicant's intent to comply with all of these concerns. And we appreciate that. And I think that we applaud that. But as it is right now, all we have is this letter that says that they're going to comply with all of the requirements. We don't actually see that they are complying or have complied. I think that is fairly critical, because I think there's going to be some public improvements that are going to require a subdivision improvement agreement. Those, we don't know what the costs of those public improvements are, because they need to be bonded by way of the subdivision improvement agreement. And I think that we need to have the county engineer verify that those cost improvements, the cost of those improvements is adequate. And I think we have to double check. And I think once we see the compliances, the site plan compliances, I think we're going to have to send that back to the county engineer for additional re-review. My thinking about all of this is that this project is not quite ready to move forward. Our main concern is the fact that we've had statements that respond to the lack of compliance and the dedications. I think we need to have evidence that these are actually being done, rather than rely on statements that they have been or will be done. Do you have any, that's as brief as I can be for the time being. Do you have any questions for me?
For a little bit of clarification, Paul, I think, I guess my main question is, and I guess somewhat elementary of me maybe, but I feel that most of our conditional approvals are conditioned upon an agreed upon subdivision improvement agreement and compliance with engineered, remarks in that process. I guess I feel like most of our, if we've had any kind of approvals in the past, they're conditioned on those things. Is there something specific about this application that you're worried that there's going to be substantial changes to the site plan that we should be reviewing because of those changes. As far as just, I'm just looking at the task in front of the planning commission and the county commissioners right now is approving a minor subdivision and the conditional use permit for the drive-through. And I'm just wondering, are there, and then the site plan, is your concern just that those changes could be significant enough to alter what we're approving, what we could be approving tonight?
I think that's an excellent question. And the answer to that question is, I think that the possibility exists. I don't know if it absolutely will or not, but the possibility does exist that the project will have to change significantly. My gut feeling is that probably not, but I think I am concerned about moving forward based upon promises that they can move forward.
But if we are conditioning those requirements, whether they've made a promise or not, if it's a condition of our approval, and this is obviously all if we go to move to approve it, but if we were to go move to approve it and we had that as a condition that they have to comply and reach an agreement with our engineer without any substantive changes to the site plan that we have approved, wouldn't that condition then take care of that, promise or what have you?
Which is why I gave you, the Planning Commission, the possibility of conditionally approving this application. Yes, I think that it's probably entirely possible that that could be done, that they receive a conditional use permit or a conditional approval for all three applications, which requires a new plat, a new site plan, and then also review by the Planning Commission of the new site plan. I think that there's some risk, as limited as it might be. Yes, you could conceivably approve or recommend approval of this to the Board of County Commissioners for a hearing by them next week, next Monday. But I think that the risks involved to the county and perhaps even to the applicant are significant enough that I don't recommend it, but it is still available to you as the Planning Commission to proceed with a conditional approval of all three applications.
Well, and I guess that's my question to you is what are those significant risks, just so that everybody here understands what those are?
Well, a reduction in the size of the parcel is the first one. I think it's a 1.5 acre parcel that is being split into 0.75 acres. I don't know that with removing 7.5 feet along the Poplar Street and 5 feet along the Mountain View Drive, I don't know what kind of size that lot is going to result in. I don't know if they're going to be able to continue to fit the required parking on it. I don't know if they're going to be looking at exceeding the lot coverage, the impervious lot coverage, because like I said, I think it's already at that maximum right now. I think that there are some drainage concerns that have been promised to be fixed. I think that there's enough concern that they may find themselves unable to comply with their current site plan.
Can I speak to that real quick? It's Rachel with HKS.
Yes.
Paul, and for everyone's information, so with the requested right-of-way dedication, like Paul said, each lots are 0.75 acres. With the requested right-of-way dedication, that will decrease each lot to 0.71 acres. And we are confident that the site plan, with an adjustment to the lot line, will remain as shown.
New piece of information for me. So I think that is looking for me to make comments and decisions on the fly, which is something else that I'm a little uncomfortable about doing. I think that 0.75 to 0.71 doesn't seem like a very significant reduction in the size. But I do also know, Rachel, maybe you already know, how about the lot coverage, which I think is restricted to 0.67% of the parcel. Do you know what that?
I
know that
don't.
yet?
No, I don't.
Okay.
This is Ryan. So Rachel put together this exhibit when we received the comments on 5/25 regarding the dedication. She put this together and I sent it to our architect, who was able to do calculations that if we were to go down to 0.71 acres, we would be just under or right at the impervious area. So we would still be able to meet those requirements.
Okay, well, this is, again, information that is coming to me right now. It's not information I've had based upon the comments of the review by the county engineer. A conditional approval of these three applications will actually get to the Board of County Commissioners next week for their consideration, final consideration. The point that would be of concern to me after that is that we don't yet have a building permit application. And would the building permit application be withheld until such time as the plat has been approved? Ordinarily, that would be the case.
Sure. Well, I think that as far as process for the meeting, I think we move forward with, if there's anything else staff wants to present on this, we'll go ahead and move forward with public comment, and then Planning Commission and commissioners can chat about, their thoughts as far as kind of this discussion goes.
I do have one other thing, Heather, that I'd like to raise. The responses that Rachel gave us on Friday give me a lot of confidence that they really want to do this to the best of their ability and do it right. I see a number of references to civil construction documents. And I take it we haven't seen those. Is that correct, Rachel?
That is correct. We were getting ready to submit them. And then we got these comments back and didn't want to waste the time of the reviewer to review them until we could incorporate these changes to the site plan. So yes,
Okay.
that is correct.
Well, were you planning to submit those civil construction documents as part of the building permit?
That was my understanding of how the process of the county works, is that it is submitted to the building department.
I am the building department. The reason I'm asking this question is that the references made by you on Friday to me concerning the civil construction documents have nothing to do with the building permit. So my question is that should we not have been able to see these civil construction documents as part of this original proposal?
I guess, Paul, I'm not sure. I mean, we've never had that as part of our approval process here before. I guess I'm wondering why that's relevant to this application.
Well,
process for
because
planning.
many of those responses from HKS concerned the drainage, which were going to be solved as part of the civil construction documents, the utility alignment. Those are all things that I think some of which may be part of a building permit, but not all of it is.
And Paul,
So-
I'm not entirely sure if I'm following, because we are showing on the site plan, like an overall utility layout, drainage, et cetera, but some of the comments on the site plan were asking for construction level of detail, such as like plan and profile. And those typically just aren't involved and included with site plans.
No, I would agree that they typically aren't, but now all of a sudden we have some. I agree that they weren't necessary as part of the original proposal. But now that you are proposing to submit civil construction documents, should they not be subject to review by the county engineer?
I do agree that they should be subject to review by the county engineer. I just don't necessarily think I'm in agreement with you that it needs to be at the time of site plan submittal.
Or subdivision submittal or conditional use permit submittal. And I think that all three of those together would warrant this. Now, this civil construction documents sit in your notice, your letter to me last Friday. That's the first time that I've seen any reference to civil construction documents. Is that did they not exist until you wrote me this?
No, like I said, we were preparing to submit them, and then we got comments back about the site plan, and I didn't want to waste your time and the county engineer's time to review the now outdated civil plans until we could incorporate the right-of-way dedication, the drainage concerns, et cetera, into both the site plan and the civil CDs.
Okay, then these civil construction documents should be part of the overall review procedure for all three of these applications.
And we can make them as such.
Okay. Heather, I think that if you want to proceed with considering an approval conditionally on this, I think that that's certainly something that we would need to have as a condition of approval that didn't make it into my suggested conditions of approval from last week. Also, I guess one of the things that I'd be a little concerned about is ordinarily I would withhold the issuance of a building permit until all of these conditions of approval have been demonstrated to be complied with. I think the Board of County Commissioners can tell me not to do that.
Yeah, I guess I feel like that's kind of how most of these applications have existed in the past anyhow, is that any kind of approval with conditions that those conditions were met as appropriate before a building permit was issued. So I guess I'm not sure why this is different.
It isn't. I don't think it is. In fact, I think the applicants are looking for a conditional approval today, would very much like to have a conditional approval today. But I don't see that will get them anywhere because we won't be able to issue a building permit until all of those conditions are actually met, unless I'm told otherwise.
Right.
We understand as the applicant that that's the case.
And I guess,
Sorry.
not to keep, to belabor this, but the planning commission, I mean, we're made up of a bunch of really smart folks, but we're not engineers. We're not the county engineers. That's why the county has engineers. So typically, in the past, our approval process, approval or denial process for any of these applications has been conditioned upon the county engineer approving things. So I'm just confused a little bit about why we would, what new information the planning commission would be getting later on down the road by tabling this file. I guess I'm thinking from an applicant's perspective, getting this public process out of the way, saying, yes, the community wants this or doesn't want this. Let's find that out first, and then either have that approval or not have that approval. And then if you get that approval, then you continue working through to make sure that those agreements are met by the county engineer. And if that condition is part of if we were to approve it, if that condition was part of our approval process, it seems to me that that would cover that, because I guess I'm just like, I got copies of all the engineer documents, and as much as I understand a lot of it, I don't understand some of it. And I don't know that it's our job to understand that piece. I think it's our job to say that, because we're not going to override what the county engineer is saying, right? So we're going to say that if the county engineer says X, Y, and Z is what needs to happen, we agree with that. And these are the things that we know and we want to happen as part of the other conditions. So I guess I'm thinking that just as far as hearing this whole process and trying to see how this all plays out, it feels like if there's not going to be big changes to what the planning commission actually sees, minus, like I understand that the engineer is going to see changes and the site plan may change slightly, but if there's not any kind of major redesign, like, hey, we're asking for less parking, or we're asking for totally different entry points or less landscaping or anything like that, if there's no substantial changes to those types of things, then I think, I guess in my opinion, it seems like the application is going to be the same for us on the planning commission side now as it would be in 3 weeks once they mitigate things with the county engineer. And so I think that's where my question is for you, Paul. And if I'm misunderstanding that, I guess I just want to make sure that the planning commission has a clear path as to, if we were to table it, there's going to be some sort of change that we have some sort of say and or opinion on, or do we just condition it on, hey, you don't have approval from us until you have these conditions met by the county engineer, until you have a site plan that's approved by the county, all of those things, and then whatever conditions we come up with that have to do with this application from our perspective.
I think, Heather, that is an excellent point, which is a large part of the reason why I gave you that as an opportunity to be able to move forward with a conditional approval. Understanding that, at least for now, until the board says otherwise, there's no building permit until all these conditions are met. And I'm comfortable with going in that direction. My history as a planner has been that there's often times in which these kinds of things are pushed down the road a bit and possibly eventually get pushed down the road to their last possible ability to comply. And then there's a flurry of activity that has to be done by both staff and the applicant to be able to meet those conditions of approval. I am a little afraid of that. It's happened before. It's happened before recently here in our community. And I'm afraid that is something that's liable to happen again. But again, once again, the conditions of approval are listed for you in the staff report. In fact, it's interesting for me to make note of the fact that almost 3/4 of the staff report is discussion of approval criteria and discussion of each and every one of the potential motions that need to be made. So yes, as far as you're concerned, as the Planning Commission is concerned, I fully suspect you're not going to see something that's a whole lot different.
Okay. Okay, well, we'll keep moving with the format of the meeting. I think at this time, I'm gonna let, we'll open up public hearing, and I will let Anne start with those who sent her a chat. Sorry.
Madam Chairman,
Yes.
it might be more appropriate to allow for the Planning Commission or the board to ask questions of the applicant and or staff. That's how we've done that in the past.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I just thought we did it after public comment, but yeah, I'm happy to do it either way. Are there any questions from Planning Commission staff or county commissioners for the applicant before we do public comment?
I don't have any questions for the applicant now, but I'd like to hear public comment and have a space to ask questions
Yes.
as well. Thanks.
Mhm. Commissioner Fiedler, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for the presentations from the applicants. I had two questions or points. One is, if I was reading the site plan right, there's a on-site sign, and I was just wondering if you had or would present details on the sort of height and size of that sign. Maybe I missed it in the materials, but I didn't see anything on, the square footage and the height and illumination of that sign marked on the site plan. And maybe I'll just note, we are pretty much adjacent to a scenic byway. So I think it's important to hear more about the plans for that. And then second, looking at the traffic study, I appreciate the comments you made about bringing, especially that Poplar driveway back away from Mountain View Drive. But I did notice on the traffic study, it was done, I think, like in the middle of February. And I just wonder if it would be worth looking at summer traffic flows on that corner, sort of as Friday weekend people pour into Safeway right across. I appreciate that the immediate driveway is pulled back on Poplar, but I just feel like there could be a lot of people kind of turning in off of Mountain View or trying to get back out on what's a pretty, it's not New York City, but it's chaotic for Leadville. With people pulling in and out of Safeway and other places coming through that four-way, signaled light. Anyway, those are the two comments on the traffic study and whether we need to take a look at summer traffic volumes there, and then details we have on the illuminated tall sign there.
I can speak to your signage question. That will be permitted separately, but I can share my screen again so everyone can see it. Here's the architectural site plan. It is rotated, so I hope that doesn't confuse everyone, but it shows the drives here. We're proposing a pylon sign here in the corner. We just received the signage plans late last week that will be submitted to the county as part of our building package. And then we'll have all the signage on the building will meet code requirements as well as lighting requirements, as we know that there's certain requirements with lighting due to it being in the mountains. But since it is permitted separately, I can't give additional details at this time. I don't have it readily available. I apologize, but that is what we're currently proposing. And then in regards to the traffic, this site plan is not showing what is being asked of the county and through the traffic study. Rachel, do you want to speak to how we're mitigating that?
I can speak. I will say that our traffic counts and kind of the analysis horizon is what we kind of decided on with the Public Works Director. So the traffic counts do come from somewhere, and I also will say that I understand your concern about the summer traffic, and that might be something that we look at, but like you said, that there's no anticipation of any intersection, I guess, improvements that are warranted with the development of these two lots.
Jeff, did that, Commissioner Fiedler, did that work okay did that help answer?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Okay. Any other comments or questions from commission members before I move on to public comment? Okay, Anne, ball's in your court.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So the first letter that we received, we only have one. Actually, I think that we actually did receive another letter that I'll just kind of give you the overview on. But this one is from Kathy Westover, and she states, "My concerns. This does not fit in with historical history of the city of Leadville or Lake County. The creation will create an increase in traffic and pollution. Taco Bell, a franchise that could lead to more franchises taking over our businesses here in Leadville. Put small businesses out of business, such as Gringos across the street. Low wages proposed by this builder will not help those who are living here right now to make ends meet to survive. With all rich people and second home buyers moving here, this will increase our cost of living. I feel that with all of those moving here, this will cause those who have lived here in Leadville a long time out, as we cannot afford increased taxes, especially for this project. Our taxes are high enough. Taco Bell is not nutritious food, but junk food. Thanks for listening. I hope our county commissioners listen to the citizens of Lake County and the city of Leadville, and not how much money can be made." And then we did receive another letter, I believe, in support of the project. Paul, is that correct? A form letter.
We received several. In fact, I think it was something like 40. Ryan, maybe you can tell me how many, or Aliona?
I can tell you, Paul, it was exactly 40 support.
Okay. And I believe I forwarded those on to the commissioners, both the board and the planning commission.
Yeah, and I'll just read those quickly just so that we have them on the record. It was the same letter and signed by 40 different individuals. It just said, "To whom it may concern, I'm writing to express my support for the proposed Taco Bell development and the associated applications to be heard at Lake County Planning Commission's meeting on Monday, June 14th, 2021. Subject property address of 1717 Poplar Street, parcel ID number, in talking about the application numbers. So we did receive 40 people who signed that form letter.
And then the next, I've got just a couple people that have asked to speak when we had the chat put on. So just a reminder that this is the appropriate time to raise your hand if you would like to make comment during the public input portion. So the first person that I have is Scott Morrow.
Scott Morrow, are you still on? Okay, maybe we'll try to come back to him.
Okay, and then I have Marla Ackridge.
Yes, for the record, Marla Akridge, the resident address is 304 East Fifth Street. The work address is 400 Harrison Avenue, Suite 100, and I'm the executive director of the Leadville Lake County Economic Development Corporation. Some questions for the applicant, so we have our numbers in the record. What is the capital investment of the building, the salary ranges, the breakdown of full-time and part-time, and can you give a little bit more detail on that philanthropic side of what number you would be giving back to the community?
Lena, can you
Marla,
take,
Yes.
go ahead, Lena.
What we're gonna do is we're gonna take public comment and then applicant and or representatives. If you can just take note and of the questions and or comments, we'll come back to you guys to just do a full response to any public comment at that point.
And the only other public comment I have is that our organization, we know that Taco Bells are a well-known entity, and when people are traveling, they want that consistency with their product. And we also know that our major corridor of Harrison Avenue, that we don't want those formula businesses, which is important to have those formula businesses in our commercial districts. So I professionally and our organization support this because we understand the number of jobs that it'll create, and it is above prevailing wage, I believe, or above minimum wage, and that's why I asked those questions. So thank you.
Thank you, Marla.
And then I had, and I apologize if I don't pronounce your name right, Ms. Chavez, but Alana?
Yes.
Chavez?
Lena, because a lot of people cannot pronounce. I just want to make a comment as a resident of Lake County since 2008. I believe that Lake County is underserved in the restaurant business, and with the population is growing and the big railroad project is coming up, I feel we need more restaurants around. If I'm planning to order food for my kids right now, I need to wait at least an hour, unless I just want to go to eat at Subway. There is not enough quick options to take, family for a quick meal. So I think it will be extremely important, and it will serve good to Leadville to have a fast, quick serve restaurant that people can come for breakfast, lunch, and late dinner, because we are going to be open late into the night. So this is my comment as a resident.
And it looks like we have Scott Morrow back with us. Scott?
Scott Morrow, are you there?
There, I got it unmuted. That didn't take long. How y'all doing? I missed some of the meeting. I just wanted to say that, the beautiful thing about Leadville, and the reason why for decades I wanted to retire here, is it's just this little town with this little consortium of small businesses. And then I noticed they had a Subway, and then I noticed they had a grocery store called Safeway that doesn't have any groceries. But we don't need a Taco Bell, folks. We really don't. We don't need any monopolies. It's going to put a beautiful place like Gringo's out of business. Gringo's is actually uses real meat, whereas Taco Bell, their meat doesn't even qualify as real meat according to Environmental Working Group, and most of their products are really borderline toxic. I mean, not even safe for human consumption. You're going to bring them in with all the extra traffic and everything. I understand that they probably will generate some property tax revenue, some business tax revenue, if in fact they're going to actually be taxed. A lot of times, I don't know what's behind the scenes, but a lot of times they get a break for coming to our town. But I'd love to see you turn this down for the reasons I verbalized. And I really thank you for your time and your effort in having this meeting. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Scott.
And I don't have anyone else that signed up in the chat. So if you want to go to people that have their hand raised, it looks like Sharon might be the next.
Yep, Sharon, I see your hand up. If you can please state your full first and last name and your mailing address for Anne, that would be helpful.
Hi, my name is Sharon Walker. My mailing address is P.O. Box 1828, Leadville, Colorado. And I just wanted to let you know that I am opposed to Taco Bell coming into Leadville. As Scott just said, when I moved here, it was lovely to come to a town that didn't have all of the major chains here. My biggest concern is the increase of traffic for that intersection. Right now, we don't even know how much of an increase it's going to be with the rail yards, but adding this to that intersection is going to cause even more issues. And I definitely agree that there should be a summertime volume study, because we all know how badly that intersection backs up with everybody trying to turn into Safeway. I also would hate to see this approved, because I think it's very unfair to the existing businesses that have worked so hard to stay in business, and yet then you have somebody come in with their competition. The other question, or the other thing I would be concerned about, is I don't know where Taco Bell is going to get 30 employees in Leadville when our existing businesses can't even find anybody to work for them. So I just wanted to raise my concerns, and thanks for letting me speak.
Thank you, Sharon. At this time, I don't see any other hands raised. Are there any other public comments out there, or folks that would wish to ask questions or concerns or approval for this application? Okay, I don't see any hands, so I'll move on to Planning Commission and County Commissioners. Another round of any questions, or I'm sorry, actually, before I do that, I'm going to let the applicant and or representatives kind of respond to some of the public comments that were made at this point.
Thank you, Heather. About the full-time, part-time employee counts, we are thinking we're going to have from 13 to 14 full-time employees, and then from 5 to 7 part-time employees. We, as our company, we never do pay a minimum wage. We all this time start hiring people at a higher rate. If we're looking at our Frisco location, the closest one to Leadville, our average wage is $15+ an hour. So it's so I don't think that people saying that we're going to pay a minimum wage of $12.32 an hour, it's incorrect. We never start our people at a minimum wage. And as well, we do donate a lot of food and participating in the local events throughout the year. And doing a lot of local marketing, supporting our local radio stations by advertising with them instead of just using a national advertising campaigns. Just to give you a quick number, just for local radio stations, we're spending more than $20,000 a year, just advertising on the local radio station and supporting them. And this is not including the food banks, the food donations, the helping kids clubs, high school sports. So I would say the number, I would say minimum number, it's a $40,000 a year or plus that we are supporting towards local communities.
And one quick thing that I like to say, as Frisco, running with Frisco, I mean, many small businesses, I go to many other restaurants, but I go to Taco Bell for a quick bite, it's not that we're taking their business away. It's just, to get your day going, it's a small transaction. You go in, you go out, and your life keeps, I mean, your day keeps going. So it's not like they're saying, you know, we're gonna take their business away. It's just, it's a change. Because I've had a lot of residents from Leadville come from Leadville come to up to Frisco, and they've been asking me, you know, when are you guys gonna open a Taco Bell down in Leadville? And basically, you know, probably the flow, or like they say, the traffic, as you've seen our Frisco location, they go out onto the highway, and it's a pick up and go. You know, it's not too much of a traffic flow, especially in Leadville. That's what I see.
And I can add as well, there was a question where we're gonna find employees for this location. I do not think we're gonna have troubles finding employees. Right now, our Frisco location is fully staffed. All our locations are fully staffed. People want to work for Taco Bell, and I think we're gonna have a lot of high school kids. They would love to have a summer job or a small part-time job, 2 days, 4 or 5 hours in the evening. To go do something, and they do not have to drive, to Frisco, Avon, or Vail, to work. So they can save money on gas, and I think it's going to be great.
Great, thank you. Any other questions or responses for the applicant to public comment? Go ahead, Bob.
I'm not sure how to put that little hand signal up there, but
I saw yours, so that worked.
thank you. I think was Mara also had an interest in what the capital was involved with this project. And as you guys know, there's a lot split going on, but on the portion that is just going to be the Taco Bell development, I'm not talking about the restaurant, I'm talking about just the land, building, construction costs. That's gonna be a total of approximately $1,750,000 that Turner Management will have invested in this project. And on top of that, Taco Colorado will have approximately $475,000 invested in getting the restaurant equipment, signage, and everything up and running. So it is a substantial investment, and that is why we're involved with this meeting. Obviously, is we need to make some decisions to move forward and spend more money. We have a lot of deposits up, a lot of that money has been spent already. So we appreciate everybody's time, and certainly any more questions we can answer. Fred, do you have anything to add to that?
Yes, I do. At this point, we've been at it since basically the beginning of the year. Right now, our company is in a position where we have to make a hard decision whether we decide to keep going with this project or we decide that it's not going to work. The biggest thing that we're looking for right now, I guess, at this point in this meeting, as far as I'm concerned, is being able to have a drive-through. If I can't have a drive-through, the whole project is dead. So if we could get some kind of decision on, yes, you can have a drive-through with a special use permit tonight, that would make me a whole lot more comfortable. Otherwise, I'm really in limbo. This project is just taking too long and too many roadblocks being brought in. That's my comment right now. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. At this time, I'll open it up for, if we can just do the hand raise thing, county commissioners and planning commissioners for any questions for the applicant and or comments that we want to make part of public hearing. Sarah, Commissioner Mudge.
Sorry, sometimes as host, I can't raise my hand. Good evening. Thank you all for coming. I think that the responses to some of the concerns and questions were really helpful. And I was happy to see that there wasn't, I don't think there was any pushback on a lot of what was outlined as concerns. I would just like to express, you know, some of my concerns still lie in some of the signage and over, you know, maybe having too much signage. I noticed, I think in Frisco, the lighting and the signage is really minimal along that Highway 9. And I wonder if we can't take the same approach here, perhaps. Though I think with a 24/7 operating facility, there are definitely some safety concerns and that need to be taken into account, I suppose. The other one for me is the drainage, that open space on the east end of the property. I wonder if that's meant to be more of a retaining pond, but I think that if there's any way to incorporate something like that, though I am no engineer, if that does is a big concern, that might be a wise decision. And the other thing, I wonder if you can explain a little bit more about some of the sidewalks and the pedestrian flow that you, the improvements that you plan to put in. Specifically, again, I'm not sure, though I know that there's traffic and it's a very busy intersection. I'm not sure I'm as concerned about the increase to all of that traffic as far as the vehicles go, but I am wondering if there's a better solution to increasing safety for pedestrian and multimodal traffic coming in both on the Mountain View side, as well as a bit southeast of the property. I can't help but think there's going to be just some natural paths and traffic off of that Highway 24 sidewalk through some of the other properties like the liquor store or Scott's. And if there might be any resolve by Taco Bell and or collaborating with neighbors potentially, or if that conversation has even been brought up by CDOT. And I think that's most of what I have at the moment. Thank you.
And applicant / representatives, if you want to go ahead and address any of those comments or questions, you're more than welcome.
I'll step in here real quick, Sarah. A couple of things there. Let me start on the drainage side of it. In the very beginning, we understood that there was a propensity for the water to drain to the northwest corner, and that's been addressed in the document Paul had spoken about earlier, and we are aware of that. We're planning on bringing in up to about 18 inches of clean fill dirt that's been approved by the locals as clean dirt to bring in to help mitigate that. You'll see in our design from the site plan we spoke about earlier, along the eastern side there, we left that grassy area there for you that they wanted to picnic. And I'm not going to say excess space, but so that in case there was going to be that dedication along Poplar there, whether that's going to require a sidewalk, that's up to the county and what they put in the SIA agreement. I mean, what they're proposing already is, I think we did the calculation, would be a dedication of $50,000. So, and that's just in land value. So I don't know what the excess the excess cost the engineer is going to come up with as far as the improvements along Poplar. We have a little bit more control of what happens along Poplar, obviously, because that's the land we're dedicating. If you look along Mountain View, from Mountain View, the shoulder to our property is probably an 8 to 10 foot wide culvert. There's a drainage culvert there. So I believe our engineers are looking at how to take any water, as you said, that would accumulate on the eastern side of the property and along Poplar, how that would flow into that culvert along the north side of the property. And of course, our engineers are working on the drainage off of our site through the northwest part of the property and then into that same culvert. You mentioned pedestrian traffic. Can't do much about the sidewalk other than what the county recommends. As far as people cutting through from 24 to the property, there is a bank. I don't know if many of you have been there, but there is quite a steep bank from the cafe down to Poplar. So I'm not quite sure many people will be cutting through there. As far as down towards the laundry facility or down towards the liquor store, certainly people could come through from that direction, but anybody coming down from the lighted intersection would probably come around the cafe and then come across Poplar and then onto our property. I think those were the items you mentioned. Thank you.
And if I can, I will add to Bob's statement really quickly too, is one of the comments from Paul and the county engineer was to add a 5-foot sidewalk along Mountain View. And we will work with Paul and the county engineer for that alignment, because like Bob said, that there is a big ditch along Mountain View as well that we need to accommodate.
Madam Chair, it's Paul here. Could I ask Mr. Soliday a question?
Sure.
Mr. Soliday, you mentioned that you have outdoor heated surfaces, like the drive-through and then some of the walkway area. What happens to, and I presume you've done this in at least somewhat similar climates as ours. What happens to the water that gets generated by snowfall that is warmed? What happens to that? Does it leave the site and become ice?
Paul, that's a good question, and I'm not the engineer. I'm Rachel's firm or the pros in that department, but correct. It's that altitude and those temperatures, it does melt. It goes into channels that we do move off into the culverts according to your engineering plans. But that certainly is a lot safer than having slippery, icy drive-throughs, because as the engines from the cars heat the ice and melt it, it produces that problem of it then refreezing. So having them heated moves that water to the side and into the proper drainage areas. And Rachel is the engineering firm. Rachel, if you want to add to that.
No, I think you hit the nail on the head there, Bob.
I might further comment that it gets cold enough up here that if the water reaches a surface that is not heated, it pretty much is going to freeze almost right away. And even if that is in drainage, whatever design drainage that you've put in there. That's why a lot of people up here have heat tape running through their gutters or their downspouts, because they get clogged with snow melt and get clogged up with ice. I don't know that this is a deal killer. It's just a question that I have, that if it turns to ice and then ice collects over throughout the winter, I can't picture how much that might become a problem. I don't know that it ever will.
Well, we're certainly trying to address as many of these issues as we can. You do have a unique environment up there, and the heated sidewalks, the effort to move the egress and egress to take into consideration the traffic issues. You've all heard the phrase, this isn't our first rodeo. We have 4 other locations in mountain towns, and certainly any of those things that we can add. If we see something that comes up, we want to take care of it. Lena, president of the company, has been with us, I think, 17 years now. I don't think she likes to admit that, but has been with us 17 years. And so many of those things that are little things that when you run operations at a restaurant make you not only fit into the community, but are things that make every site unique. So we appreciate the comments. As Fred mentioned, we do have a critical time to move forward and spend some more money. We would obviously like to get approved if there are some conditions. We're not going to not meet those conditions. Hopefully, if they're reasonable, we can certainly go forward and meet the criteria and get this open for everybody.
Thank you, Mr. Soliday.
Do we have any other questions from county commissioners or planning commissioners?
I did see Howard Tritz's hand up, but I just want to wrap up by saying I hope somebody maybe asked another question about the signage and or a comment. We hear a little bit more about that. I also would like to say that I don't have personally have be concerned about there being another drive-through there.
And
So-
sorry to talk. Oh, I'm sorry.
For clarification on signage, staff, Paul and Ann, if you could help us with that. That's permitted separately than these applications, or? So is there another process that'll just be Board of Adjustment if it doesn't meet our current sign code?
We do have a current sign code. Ann and I both think it's sorry.
Sure.
But it exists anyway. And from what I can tell, we talk about signage as being a total amount of square footage. We don't know what that actual number is, both on the building and other lighted signs. We do know that there's going to be this monument sign, or there's proposed to be this monument sign. But if there is any kind of question concerning the amount of signage, that goes to the Board of Adjustment for final determination. Because if they're looking for signage in excess of the square footage that's allowed by the code, and I think that's what's being currently proposed, we then turn that over to the Board of Adjustment for final determination.
So sign code is an administrative review. And then we would bump it up to Board of Adjustment for any kind of dimensional standards that are outside what the code allows.
And
Go ahead, Mr. Soliday.
We have a consultant, and certainly Ryan, or perhaps even Rachel can speak to this, that just submitted a sign package for us. So that is in process now as to whether it meets the code, signage, lighting, brightness. Every town has different requirements. Some like their parking lots brightly lit with white light, so there isn't crime and mischievous things happening. And signage, some allow a tall sign. Again, it all comes down a lot of times to square footage of what you have on what side of the building and what you have as a monument versus a pole sign. So that whole package is being put together. In fact, I think it was presented to either Ryan or Rachel just in the last 3 or 4 days. So that's in process. And again, we certainly want to abide by what the rules are.
And this is Ryan. We just recently received this. Our signage vendor put it together. They do a code check to ensure that we are not exceeding the allowable square footage. So to make you guys more comfortable, and I can show you the proposed signage here. As you can see on the left, this is the front elevation. We are only showing one small bell sign. On the rear, we have the Taco Bell shown here. And then this is the left side elevation, just one Taco Bell here. I know the previous renderings I showed had coloring in some places, which we will not be doing. And then this is the other side elevation, just another Taco Bell. So we have one sign on each side, and it does not exceed code requirement or code. It meets code requirements. I want to make sure you guys saw that as well.
But for clarification, there's likely going to be other signs, right? Like a anchor sign and other signs on the property.
I didn't this and scare you guys or anything, but there will be directional signs and menu boards, obviously, that say exit and enter. So like do not enter or enter and exit signs throughout here. And then here is our proposed pylon sign, which will just be the Taco Bell at the top.
Thank you. I think that's helpful.
Okay, no problem.
Any other questions from planning commissioners or county commissioners?
I had a follow-up question. I think it was Fred who made the comment about being concerned about coming out of this meeting without being able to do the drive-through. My understanding is there's nothing, and there's no objection or code about the drive-through. That's a conditionally allowed use. Is the concern about setbacks, or maybe that's not quite the right word, but is a concern about the site being squeezed down because of what's required on Poplar and Mountain View, that the circulation of the drive-through doesn't fit anymore? I just want to make sure that I understand the concern. And then I guess the question is, if I'm understanding the concern right, is what you've heard so far about the desire from staff for appropriate space on Poplar and Mountain View? I mean, from what you've heard so far, is that being shut down, or are things still working for you?
So just to clarify quickly, the drive-through question. So the restaurant is use by right per the zone. A drive-through is a conditional use. So we hear whether or not we think a drive-through is appropriate in that location. So that's the conditional use permit portion of the application. There's the minor subdivision portion of the application. And then the other one is the site plan review, making sure the site works as laid out, just to give you some clarification on that. And so I think that the applicant is just concerned that, yes, I have a use by right to do this restaurant, but not necessarily the conditional use to do the drive-through. And I don't want to do the restaurant without the drive-through. But I'll let the applicant respond to the other questions about if the site seems to work based on the proposed engineering requests.
Yes, this is Fred again. I think we've already shown that taking in the new changes were already designed into the site plan. We did foresee that. So I don't think that that's really an issue as far as the existing site plan. We've made that pretty clear, I think, this evening. If not, then we need to discuss it a little bit more, because again, it's already designed into our site plan. And again, what the situation that our company is that we have a huge cost coming up. And if we don't have the permission, if you will, with a special use permit for the drive-through, it's just a dead issue. We're dead in the water. And so in order for us to continue to put gobs of money into this, we would definitely need to have the assurance that that's not going to be taken away from us. And again, when we look at the site plan, it's very clear that it's already been designed in what the engineers initially wanted to do. Now, if they change their mind and 2 weeks from now and want to change it again, then that's possible for sure. But I have no way of foreseeing that either. But as far as the way it is now, and any issues with the traffic study, that study was to go out at least 20 years. And it also involved maximum traffic, just like another fast food restaurant in the other half of this property, which we sure would like to keep as close to 3/4 of an acre as possible. Otherwise, we're losing ground too on our investment. As far as a lot of the street improvements, I gotta say that when we started this process, we were told that there was nothing planned to be done with Poplar. And we said, well, that can't be really the case with the condition of Poplar. And so that's one of the reasons why we did design additional space to take care of what we thought would probably be an issue, that even though we tried to address it right up front a while ago. Thank you. And thanks for all of your consideration and your time.
Do we have any other planning commission or county commissioner comment or questions? Bryce, I see your hand.
Yeah, I just wanted to throw out a quick comment that seems like the applicant is kind of aware of the conditions that'll be put on them and are willing to meet or go above and beyond for those engineering conditions. So that's good to hear. And then I just wanted to say something like, I agree with Marla's comment that, I think this does have a lot of economic benefit for Leadville, but more specifically that it's in the appropriate location. So, these chain formula businesses, maybe we have areas that are desirable for them and not. And I think this is one of the areas where it does fit in, or at least is, a benefit to the whole community instead of taking away. So that's all I have.
Thank you, Bryce. Any others? I think someone had mentioned Howard might have had his hand up earlier.
Howard, you are talking. You're muted, Howard.
Howard, if you can hear us, you're muted. Can you see your picture? You'll just go up to the right-hand corner and unmute yourself.
Okay, I'm curious why it doesn't work when you punch on the microphone. But anyway, my comments I thought would be probably more suited for our discussion. But do you want to wait for the discussion? I'm not asking any questions of Taco Bell or the commissioners. So maybe you want to wait until we get into discussion on this.
Yeah, that probably makes sense. Thanks, Howard. Any other questions for the applicant and or public comment before we close that period?
Sorry, this is Abby. I'm just curious, is lighting then a part of the building permit process?
No.
We do have lighting as part of that. I'll let Paul answer a little bit more on that. I know that we have a condition in here to meet dark skies as much as possible, but go ahead, Paul.
The lighting will come along as part of the building permit, but there are conditions placed upon that lighting that will have to be met.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions before we close public hearing portion of this, all three of these files? If not, I would entertain a motion from a planning commission member to close public hearing for, you'll need to list all three file numbers.
I'll make the motion to close this public hearing and go into discussion.
Okay, and just for clarification, that'll be for file 21-03, 21-04, and 21-05. Do I have a second on that motion?
A second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Do I have any opposed? Okay. At this time, public hearing is closed. Those on the call, other than county commissioners have a really great night. Those others on the call are welcome to stay on. We just can't take any more public comment at this time, but you're welcome to stay for our discussion and motion hearing portion of the meeting. And with that, I would like to ask for just a 1-minute break, if we can have that just for 1 minute. We'll let the commissioners go and such.
I don't know if I heard Heather correctly. Are the applicants supposed to stay on for this, or is this discussion you all are supposed to do together?
The applicant can stay on, they just cannot participate.
Okay, thank you.
If I can just get my planning commission members to, if they don't have their picture up, just raise their hand that they're back. Oh, look, I see people's pictures coming back. Okay, I think we're all back on.
Yeah, and sorry, my internet is just slow enough today. For some reason, I can't use the video. So my apologies.
That's okay, thank you. So I'd like to, as far as giving this a little bit of structure, obviously we want to do kind of an open discussion, I think, of the whole project as a whole, but then we'll want to talk about each approval possibility individually per file number and subject matter. So it's a little bit different than normal in that way. But if planning commission members would like to just kind of give their general comments on the project as a whole and any outlying concerns, we can kind of place card those concerns under the appropriate file number to discuss on conditions for that file number, if that makes sense. So if there's any planning commissioner, and since there's only 5 of us, we can just try to go ahead and speak without doing a whole lot of formality to it.
Okay, I'll start out. Yeah, they're, first off, I'd like to say that I think Taco Bell is a good thing to have in Lake County. I don't see where it's going to interfere with the restaurants. Anytime I go to a restaurant, it's usually pretty full. A lot of times you have to wait. And so I don't have a problem with that. And I think that's one topic we ought to bring together. The signage is another one. What I could see from what the signage was before and what the lady had showed in her site plan, it didn't seem like it was overly done. It seemed minor. Then the traffic, yeah, it's a busy intersection, but that really isn't new. When the big bowling alley and the saloon was there, Christie Lanes, there's a lot of people in and out of there. And at that time, Safeway was still there. And, during those days, Climax was at its peak. And we had maybe up to bumping 12,000 people in town. Climax had a payroll for 3,000. So I don't think Taco Bell's going to add a whole lot to the traffic. And I do have a comment on the heated driveway. This isn't the first time there's been heated driveways in Lake County. The bank on the west side of Harrison Avenue between 4th and 5th Streets used to be a garage. When they had an explosion, it burned down, and the public service built that building. And they had heated driveways and sidewalks, and there's never a problem with ice or the water ran off, and it wasn't major. It wasn't any more than if you shovel your driveway, the snow over on the side, it's going to melt anyway. And yeah, the drive-throughs, I think, important for any type of business like that. That's the basic topics I have.
Thanks, Howard. Who would like to go next?
I just want to say that I think I agree with most of the things Howard just said about the signage seeming reasonable and the traffic in line with prior use. It's been an empty site for a few years, but before that it was a running, thriving business, or has been in the past. I think what I'd like to comment on is maybe the conditional use permit. I said that I think this is an appropriate use there, but the minor subdivision and site plan review in the staff report, it was kind of mentioned that these are essentially engineering hoops to jump through. And other than that, it's an engineering exercise. And so I think Paul proposed a good condition, to sort of enforce the compliance of some of those outstanding engineering issues. And other than that, if it's just an engineering exercise and they're willing to jump through that hoop, then that seems fine to me. I don't think there's any reason to deny the conditional use or the conditional approval or table it. Because like you said, Heather, I just don't know if we're going to get any additional information back other than confirmation that yes, this site plan works, or no, the applicant's going to have to go through this entire process again regardless. So I guess that's all I had, is that if it's an engineering exercise and they're willing to meet that, then I see no reason to deny it.
Thanks, Bryce.
Hey, it's Abby. I think my biggest concern is around kind of the pedestrian flow. I do think it's an interesting intersection, and I think it'll only get more interesting once Rail Yards comes on. So I know there's only so much that's a part of this file, but it seems like it could be kind of a sidewalk to nowhere for a while. So I would love to at some point talk about like what are the long-term plans for that that intersection and just how pedestrian flow will really work. That's it.
Thanks, Abby.
I think I kind of mirror Howard and Abby and Bryce. My main concern going into this were I was really disappointed to see a traffic study from a Thursday in February for a site that, you know, and I mean, I just drove to Summit yesterday and it was a totally different experience than it was even 3 years ago. So I think moving forward, maybe something as the Planning Commission in our code, and a future discussion might be, you know, kind of requiring when and how that timing actually works. Because I understand that it's great to take their busy days and their numbers for the 20 years, but we've seen exponential growth. And I'm assuming Taco Bell's moving in here because they have longstanding numbers of how much traffic's happening on 24. They wouldn't be coming here if they didn't trust that they'd have the growth and the longevity of a commuter. I might be putting words in the mouth, but from previous experience and you know, family and friends working at other franchises, that's kind of a guarantee. They're expecting growth to continue here. So I would have liked to have seen some of that. I mean, February 11th, there was nothing happening. Weather's bad. There's like no one's on the road. So that's kind of one thing I really, moving forward, would like to address. This is not just a restaurant. This is a restaurant that also includes traffic. And then I don't think this is the applicants. I'm wondering if this is CDOT or the county. We are going to have people that run across from Safeway to Taco Bell like we do the taco truck that's up at the corner. And I'm wondering, are we doing a crosswalk across there, or are we just assuming that people will go up to the corner, which I'm just curious about that. And if that, you know, future discussion, but not on the table for this particular, you know, file tonight. I do think we have quite a few conditions to kind of go through, not necessarily maybe about the drive-through itself, but just kind of the whole, everything that was kind of brought up in the staff plan and all of our concerns throughout tonight.
Thank you all for sharing, and just similar to Aaron and Howard and Bryce and Abby and Marla, even how she shared, my concern is just traffic. That's the main one, in signage. Just Taco Bell sticking out like a sore thumb out in Leadville. As you know, the architecture in Leadville is unique, and so I just want to explore more about this signage and the lighting in Taco Bell. And for me, just being LA native, just coming to Leadville is just a huge difference when it comes to traffic. And so I'm just concerned about how much traffic is going to generate if we're going to add more stoplights eventually for that traffic. And just even conducting a more thorough study, as you were talking about, Aaron, about traffic during the summertime, as you know, when the Leadville series, and as we're experiencing right now, and as we're noticing, there's a lot of people coming from out of state, or just people from the Front Range coming to Leadville. It's just having a lot more traffic. And the other thing is just competition with Gringos and having Taco Bell. I feel like this is a capitalistic move. We have a lot of Mexican food and a lot of different Mexican restaurants in Leadville. Now just incorporating Taco Bell here is just going to create a bit of a competition when it comes to our locals and people working and living here. And so, but one of the plus sides that I see is just that it's going to generate more jobs. And so I know that Bryce and Marla, you mentioned that. That's something, one of the advantages of just having Taco Bell, that it would have generate more jobs for folks in town.
Thanks, Lupe. Yeah, I mean, I think I echo a lot of your all's thoughts. I think we all sometimes, after being here for a long time, get a little bit shocked with the change, right? As big change, putting a Taco Bell in town. And I think I forget that we have a Pizza Hut sometimes, you know, I think we get that shock. But after the consideration of all of it, and, you know, working with the EDC and Marla, and the EDC from the beginning, you know, one of the big things that we have pushed for so long in this community is to let our locals work here instead of commuting over the hill. And this is a step towards that. I think that if we're going to have, I'm still calling it a franchise restaurant. I forget, somebody else had another coined term for it now, but I think that's where it belongs. You know, I think the location is perfect for it. I think across, you know, from Safeway on your entrance to town, all of that works. I do have some concerns on the traffic, although I don't necessarily know that a lot of that lies on the shoulders of the applicant. I think maybe some of, obviously, the consideration does, but you know, I think the pedestrian walkway should be in, even if it's a road to nowhere for now. Because I think the county does need to work with Safeway. I mean, Safeway right now has, I don't even know how wide of an entrance point that is, but it's basically the free for all of, you know, 20 cars can enter and exit out of that hole at any point without any kind of real, you know, real organization to it. And I know that I think the corner building there where the taco truck lives at the moment has plans to do some things. So yeah, I think the county needs to, and that's probably our group as well, being a part of that planning process of what that's going to look like with Road and Bridge and CDOT, to make sure that we're creating the most, the safest and most feasible traffic design in that little intersection, because it is going to be a stoplight with a bunch of immediate entrance and exit points right there. That's a little bit crazy. I'm not sure that a lot of that falls on the applicant at this point. At this particular applicant, I think we need to study that intersection a lot more, though, as a county and with Road and Bridge, to make sure that that's designed correctly. And that makes it a little bit hard in this application, because we don't know what that design looks like to then make this applicant comply with, right? But right now, looking at their design, if they're going to have an entrance and an exit point, it's exactly where I'd want it to be, as far as further down Mountain View than up closer to Poplar. So that part works. So the thing that was missing for me on the site plan was the sidewalks. I'm glad Abby brought that up, and it does sound like that was part of the engineer's comments as well. There was one other, the signage piece. I agree with staff that our signage code, our sign code is very, very lacking. But I want to commend the applicant in this, because quite honestly, I was originally assuming we were going to see a very standardized design of Taco Bell brought forward, and we were going to have to fight to get the mountain design and, you know, fight to limit signage. And I really do actually like the design that's been proposed to us tonight. I think there's a lot of thought into that. I think it looks nice, fits in with the Safeway over there. I think the signage that's proposed so far looks okay. I mean, obviously, if we could all go backwards in time, we'd be like, no neon signs and no blah, blah, but that's not, you know, the city historical district can follow those kind of guidelines, is kind of my thought on that. So yeah, I commend the applicant for bringing us a design that looks great and fits in with that area. And I appreciate that. And I think the site works based on what's been presented. And just to reiterate, I'm not an engineer, so I want to leave that part up to the engineers and staff to make sure that they're complying with all of those pieces correctly. But from a planning and zoning perspective, I feel like this application is pretty clean, and I appreciate that for us. With that, let's talk about each piece separately, because there were staff comments, and staff feel free to jump in at any point, but we'll start with the 2103, which is the minor subdivision. And there were some proposed conditions and or notes on approval criteria. So if we want to kind of start with that, staff will let you, if you have some things you want to outline specifically on minor subdivision.
Yes, Madam Chairman, thank you. Thank you very much. I would like to talk a little bit more general at this point. I think that enough of you have indicated the need for a traffic impact study that isn't on a Thursday in February. And I think it's well within your purview to be able to ask for or condition an approval on another traffic study based upon the summertime conditions. Another thing is that Rachel and I discussed over the weekend and the Poplar Street, which I think is quite problematic. Poplar Street, as you saw in the staff report, needs to be something else other than Poplar Street, because there's already another Poplar Street. And that's sort of how things have progressed in Leadville, and how they get better is we recognize those things and we make changes. Now, Rachel and I discussed that we know that the alignment of the pavement and the alignment of the right-of-way are not one and the same thing. Another thing that's actually kind of usual in Lake County, because that's just the way it is. I don't quite know how to resolve that, but I do have something here just recently sent to me by the county engineer. It generally appears that they intend to conform to the comments provided. I had envisioned they would need to provide the minimum Poplar Street section, which is the pavement, regardless of which half they are on, as a condition for development. That might be something to consider clarifying and potentially include in their SIA, along with reimbursement conditions as other development occurs. Now, that gets kind of complicated, but I think that that what he's trying to make note of is that they are proposing to grant right-of-way on Mountain View and Poplar, but propose to construct a wider pavement section only on their half of Poplar. Therefore, traffic into the lot benefits, but traffic leaving the lot does not. We don't know. And Rachel, I might even ask the chair to let Rachel speak to the fact that we don't know really where the pavement is within the current right of. I think another thing that I'd like to mention before we go too much farther into discussing this, you might notice that the conditions of approval for each file for a condition for approval are all the same, whichever file there is. So if it is your intention to move forward with a condition for approval, I would request that you approve all three files and not just one, because I can't begin to imagine the tie-up of issues that would occur if we only approved one and not the other two. I also want to make a point that there's a condition of approval that I'd like to add. One of them is payment of county contract review agency invoices, which should have been put in there. And then I'd also like to see submittal of all of these civic construction documents. So those are two conditions that I'd like to add to the condition for approval.
Okay, I didn't write that fast. Payment of all county contract review agency invoices. Because we've got one right now, and then I'm sure we'll have more. in the second condition.
submittal of all of the civic construction documents.
Okay. Thanks, Paul.
Now, you could go through the individual findings that are suggested. I've provided you with some discussion of approval criteria. In fact, I'd say the approval criteria discussions and the suggested motions take up 3/4 of this staff report. But it gets that complicated. Some of the more. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
I mean, I think that hopefully the planning commissioners have read this document. When talking about the approval criteria for any of the files, was there anything that stood out in the approval criteria that you felt like any of the application files did not meet the approval criteria? And, you know, based with staff's comments and such.
I think that, thank you for asking me that, because I think that basically most of the findings that are made in the recommendation for approval also have the statement as conditioned in front of them. So I think that you can find that as long as the conditions are met, then the approval criteria can also be met.
That sounds good. Planning commissioners, did you have anything specific you wanted to call out as far as approval criteria? Did all that make sense as well?
I was just wondering, since we got that new letter and comment from Paul today, do we need to adjust the technical language on those conditions? Because there's a new letter after that Exhibit A, letter dated May 26th.
Oh, as far as changing the condition number 1.
Number 1, it is under 2103. Just wondering, for technical sake, do we need to point to that new letter and comments they provided back?
Yeah, so we could say and letter dated. What did it come today, Paul? What was it dated?
Came on Friday. So that
Okay.
would have been Friday, June 11th.
Okay. So we can add that to item A. Thanks, Bryce, for catching that.
Yeah, good catch, Bryce.
Well, how do you guys feel about just let's walk through each of the conditions and make sure there's no additional conditions that we want to add. We just walk through them one by one, make it a little easier as far as organized format. And maybe we'll just think it like Paul said, you know, it's the same conditions for each, but we'll have to think about them somewhat separately. Minor subdivision, conditional use permit and site plan review. Number 1, address and resolve the comments, shortcomings, and inconsistencies identified by the county contract engineer, subject to review and approval by the engineer. Letter dated May 26th, as well as the letter dated June 11th. Project narrative on April 1st. Applicant's proposed subdivision plat, applicant's drainage compliance letter, and on the 12-sheet site plan titled 1717 Poplar Street. That's the big one, right? It seems like that's the big concern by staff and such that, hey, if they can't meet this, we're dead in the water. And I think if we have this as a good condition, I guess my thought is that if they come to agreement with county engineer, and maybe the one little piece I'd like to add to that statement is, without any substantial changes to the existing application that was presented to us tonight, then we're fine with this approval. What are your guys' thoughts?
I guess I get concerned that that doesn't, I think the sidewalk area could be a pretty big issue. Just actually getting the sidewalk in, because it can't be right along Mountain View, but then there is the huge ditch there too. I'm just using that as an example, but I guess I want to make sure that Paul has enough power to enforce what he needs to enforce on the building side. I guess I just worry that it creates a little bit of gray. A little bit of gray for getting all of these conditions, getting all of those engineering comments met. It seems like a lot.
The sidewalk that was put in when Mountain View is redone, that just goes to Harrison, is that right? It doesn't extend like on the Excel property?
I don't think it does. I think it just
Mhm.
goes to Harrison and that's it.
Well, and I think back to when we did some of these subdivision applications or subdivision agreements years ago. Again, most of our files are contingent upon them coming to terms with the engineering comments. So that piece I feel like is fairly normal. What I think, Abby, you're pointing to is things that maybe the engineer has touched on that maybe haven't been addressed yet. I guess I'm not thinking there's any harm in adding a condition in here that the sidewalk gets put in. I feel that, looking back on some of the subdivisions we've done out on County Road 4 and such, there's sections where we required the open space trail be paved, even though it's like this really small section is paved and the rest is dirt, and then the rest that doesn't exist even. In the idea that it's going to happen at some point. So I think we probably all agree that there should be a sidewalk on that Mountain View side to allow that connectivity. And it's unfortunate that we don't have a county plan for what that intersection and area is going to look like as a whole, but if the sidewalk exists, we can incorporate that into any future plans for it. So I wouldn't see any reason we couldn't add that as an additional condition, Abby, to say that the sidewalk along Mountain View Drive, is a condition of approval.
And that makes sense. And I appreciate the history here. I'd be comfortable with that.
I might point out that I think that there is some degree of sidewalk painted on Mountain View north of Excel. And there are crosswalks at Harrison and crosswalks at East. The map I'm looking at actually labels that as East 17th. It's actually Poplar. There are painted crosswalks there. So there is, and the improvements on Mountain View were not actually the addition of sidewalk as much as it was a widening of the pavement and then the painting of a sidewalk. So something of a sidewalk does exist north of Excel.
But not all the way to this parcel.
Heather, this is Michael Irwin, Public Works.
Yes.
Yeah, there is a painted in bike path / sidewalk for the public foot traffic, etc., to access Mountain View from Eagles Nest all the way to Safeway. And that was done during the repaving project of 2017 down Mountain View and Mount Massive to provide that connectivity and to keep people from walking down the center of a lane of traffic on Mountain View.
Great, so that's considered a pedestrian path, that shoulder area that's kind of, I mean, it's kind of, I guess it's painted in a white solid, but that's a pedestrian / bike path on that side.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
That's too bad. I mean, but okay, I understand. It doesn't seem terribly pedestrian friendly being a shoulder of a road, but I understand.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's funny because I've gone back and forth on that. I think from a pedestrian viewpoint and or an outsider's viewpoint, it would be great if it was a sidewalk, but I also understand for the maintenance side of things, especially in the winter, I'm sure that's just easier to just plow that whole road.
Yeah.
So I kind of go back and forth as to, yeah, I mean, I wish it could be separated somehow, but I don't, yeah. And I guess that's something that, and maybe, again, outside of this application, we need to talk more about that with that whole area improvement and collaborate with Michael Irwin and Public Works to try to figure out what's the best solution. I mean, I understand that probably is the most ideal situation as far as maintenance and snow removal. So yeah, I think if the pedestrian path technically already exists for this application, I guess the question for us here is, do we want to require an additional sidewalk requirement?
I mean, I'd rather look at it holistically. If that's kind of our accepted solution now, I think it is what it is, and yeah, look at Mountain View down the road, independent of this application.
So you're aware, Abby, and I think you are, the applicant did promise to put in a 5-foot sidewalk along Mountain View.
So is that in addition to the current sidewalk? I don't know.
I don't know either. But because it hasn't.
I
Go
thought
ahead.
that the at least tonight, the way that I heard the comment was that it was complying with the requirements from the engineer on the sidewalk. I didn't know that it was completely agreeing to the 5-foot sidewalk, and I guess I would like applicant clarification on that.
I can speak to that. One of the comments from the engineer was to provide a 5-foot sidewalk. And I believe I responded in that letter that we will continue working with Paul and the engineer to determine what the alignment of that sidewalk is. So if that is to remove the one adjacent to Mountain View, or if it's in addition to, those are the details that we still kind of need to work through.
Thank you for that. So as far as consensus with the Planning Commission, as far as how you want to move forward with that particular condition, what are everybody's thoughts?
I might mention that a little bit of gray area is going to be inherent in what we're doing here. And and part of that is working with staff, the applicant working with staff. And, I don't think you're going to be able to condition so that there is no gray area.
I think it's a little tough to put it as a condition when there's already kind of a designated footpath sidewalk there, like that. It does. I agree with Abby. It's kind of like a holistic countywide problem at this point.
I'll have to chime in here also. And Mike Irwin may want to get in on this. But when they did all that paving in 2017, they also had a railing that went all the way up that they would take in and take out. Wintertime, they'd take it out, summertime, they put it in. And that's been abandoned for some reason, probably snow removal, it got ruined. But if we put in a 5-foot sidewalk in front of Taco Bell, what's it going to connect to? The road?
Well, and who's going to maintain it? How is it going to get, I think there's a lot of questions there. Not that I wouldn't, again, I always reference rainbows and unicorns because I really love them, and lots of people tend to as well. But obviously rainbows and unicorns, I would love to have a sidewalk there, but realistically in our climate and our location, I think about how many times that's abandoned and people end up walking the street anyway because the maintenance and or ability to maintain and keep it up is just really difficult. So I guess it would be my opinion that I would probably agree with Bryce that it's hard for me to add that as an additional condition if we already have a designated pedestrian path. Now, if engineering, caveat to that, I guess, would be that if engineering works with the applicant and says, hey, nope, this is a thing, we need it. And especially because we have this future plan for that area, then I want to fully support what county engineers are saying should be a part of this project. But as far as us adding the condition ourselves, I would probably at this point sway a little bit against that. What are others' thoughts?
Is there a way, or would it make sense to potentially make it a condition on, look, we understand where we're at right now, but this intersection has some very special considerations to consider, especially as it continues to grow. And if you develop that second lot as well, like if the county adopts new sidewalks instead of being grandfathered into the prior one, you would want to adopt the new one. Is that anything that we have possibility of doing?
So what we could do is when the second application comes forward, assuming that it needs site plan review, it would become a part of that.
Like, I'm just trying to figure out if there's a wordage or like, how do we get the buy-in to, if they're talking 20 years of growth and potential here at this location, how do we, hopefully, I would love to see, in 20 years, a much more pedestrian friendly section there, especially now that we're talking about how many more entrances and exits, and anyone who's lived in cities and gotten off a highway at some point has been like, what, who designed this? That's like where we're headed. So is there a way, is that ever been done before in an applicant? Again, this might not be for this particular case, but they're just at the heart. So instead of being like, oh no, your grandfather, don't worry about a sidewalk. If the comprehensive plan gets cleaner, if CDOT comes in and says something, is there a way to acknowledge that now so that there is that buy-in later?
So I think that's an awesome question, and I would refer to whether or not our right-of-way allows for that. So staff, if you could answer that, if the fact that we have the right-of-way, does that allow us to utilize that for sidewalk or road expansion or whatever we want?
Well, I think that it's probably appropriate to have Michael speak to a little bit to this, but typically sidewalks are in and part of the right of way. And I know, like, for instance, downtown in Harrison, the right of way actually consists of building front to building front, so the right of way is inclusive of the sidewalks. So yes, I think that any sidewalk we look for will wind up being in the right of way. And I think that their 5-foot dedication that they're going to, that they've promised to provide
will probably be where that sidewalk will go.
But that's carving that out, opportunity out now, not pointing to some future version of like a master plan or something.
Right. And I think that it's also important. This is an age-old question in every community that I've ever worked in. Pathway to nowhere, sidewalk to nowhere. Well, sometime it's going to be a pathway or a sidewalk to somewhere. It just isn't right now. And that's the only way we can get those kinds of things done, is ask those and point to the code that says you got to do it, whether it's to nowhere or not.
So making it timely now and not towards a future code that
Mm.
doesn't exist now.
Yeah, this is in compliance with chapter 10, section 251 of the land development code.
And generally, yes, the sidewalk is included in the right of way, like all through most of the subdivisions that do have sidewalks, like West Park, it is part of the county right of way. Even though the county does not maintain the sidewalks, it's up to the homeowners.
Sure. So that's, that's part of it. It's like you have the right of way to install a sidewalk, at some point, but to make them do it, that time is now. I think that's the clarification that we're getting right now. As far as what that looks like, I think it's hard to, I go both ways on it as we sit here and talk. Because again, I think I've seen, well, just in downtown maybe, sidewalks go unutilized and or unmaintained mostly is my issue. And what that does. Concrete just doesn't necessarily last very long here. So just trying to figure out what is the best use of that. And again, I think that's where that collaboration with county and creating more of a master plan for that whole area is pretty important. A sidewalk on this property makes the most sense along Poplar there, which I agree with Paul needs to be renamed either to Poplar Way, or I would prefer it to be a totally different name, but it's just, I go back and forth. I think that this is the opportunity to add it. It's also a burden to put on this applicant versus the coffee shop or the laundromat or the snowmobile shop that's going to become something different. It's hard to say, oh, well, this guy, because that's the better side of the street to put the sidewalk, should incur all the costs of installation and or maintenance. So I don't really know how that all plays out in other communities and how that gets balanced out so that it's a little bit more of a, I'm about 50-50 on that situation.
Good point about the other businesses, though. They're going to directly benefit from that. Shouldn't there be some sort of shared cost, or isn't that a public burden? I don't know. I just think did the coffee shop, if I'm not mistaken, the coffee shop took a conditional use permit as well to be approved to split it in from a laundromat to both businesses?
We didn't, you would have been on that hearing.
Oh, I thought that was a couple of years ago.
No,
okay.
no conditional use, because it's used by right, because he's in the business district. So the coffee shop was used by right. And
Will
therefore
the Ski-Doo shop be conditionally used, or is that going to be another use by right?
it depends on what they do, what they propose. If they're able to put in their proposed use and it fits correctly per code on that lot and meets use by right, they would not have to do any other applications. But my guess is whatever they have to do is going to require a site plan review, especially with traffic flow because of their entrance and exit points of that property. They're way too close to the intersection. So I think they'll have to do something, but I don't know that that helps us here.
Right, I'm just trying to think of like a way to make it equitable because everyone's gonna benefit from one person's cost. I mean, same with repaving Poplar. This
Right.
this business is gonna benefit for sure, but others will as well.
But I guess that's part of the risk of developing this property too, right? Is that you're gonna have to do things to make the site work. So I don't feel, I mean, I feel like it's justified. So sorry, and I have my child now in my hands.
He agrees.
He agrees.
I guess I'm just on the
Others
fence
thought-
that it would be reasonable if there wasn't already a sidewalk there, like a designated pedestrian way. And I know it's not ideal and we want it to be different. But I think that's where it's hard for me to like, yes, that is nice. Like you said, unicorns and rainbows for sure. But I think it's hard when the county already knows that there's a pedestrian path there. They've already invested in putting the line in the crosswalks. I
Well,
don't
and
know.
So I think we're talking about 2 points of sidewalk, right? We're talking about the one that would border Mountain View, which there's already a pedestrian designated area on Mountain View for, but do we require an additional sidewalk? And then there's also Poplar Way, or whatever we're gonna call that street. And yeah, I think that Bryce, I'm probably a little bit more aligned with your thinking in that if Mountain View already has a pedestrian way created or route, Poplar isn't necessarily connected to anything else yet. Just thinking of the other landowners in between there and the liquor store. I mean, there's no more frontage. There's not going to be another cut from Highway 24 there. Does there need to be a sidewalk there? I guess I just don't. I don't know. I feel like when I think about the maintenance and the installation cost of a sidewalk on Poplar Way for just the coffee shop and the laundromat and the Taco Bell, it seems unlikely to me that's like what I can envision is that the people who are actually pedestrians walking those routes, they're cutting through the parking lots and they're going the path of least resistance anyway, and the use of those sidewalks is probably fairly minimal. Mountain View Drive, I feel like needs pedestrian because of the access to Safeway from Eagles Nest and such. But if we've already got that designated route there, if the county engineers require them to have another sidewalk, I would support that, but I don't know if I would ask for it on our own. But that's just my 2 cents. Lupe or Howard, anybody?
Well said. Well said. I agree. I hit on this before, but I see no reason for a sidewalk on either side at this point. I think Abby hit the nail on the head earlier that someday the county, somebody may come in and say, we need to do a whole lot of different things here. We may have to put sidewalks all the way down to Harrison. And we may have to put in different traffic lights. But at this point, I really think it's a little overkill to require them.
For me, it's just thinking about continuity. So if Taco Bell creates sidewalk just at 5 feet, and then what if we need to build more sidewalk along Poplar Way? How you're saying, Heather? Just continuity. The design will need to fit what Taco Bell has built, and also I think it's just a larger issue with Leadville alone. I feel that a lot of the places, it's not a walkable town. I feel it's not ADA compliant, so people with disabilities have and struggle getting around town. And so I think it's a larger issue that we just need to address and we need to focus on, because I feel that it's not ADA compliant and it's not accessible for all body types.
Thanks, Lupe. That's a great point. So just to recap quickly, the engineering recommendations, I believe, just only talked about the 5-foot sidewalk on the Mountain View side of things and not on the Poplar Way side of things. So the question for this group here is, if right now we're going to refer that the engineering, that the applicant figure out things with the engineering comments and requirements, does this group want to add an additional condition that there's a sidewalk put in on Poplar Way? And I think we just need a quick count of that. We can wait till vote, but it makes a little bit more sense probably to do a straw poll right now.
Tritz, no.
Bryce, no.
Lupe, no.
I'm just never gonna go against a sidewalk. So,
Yeah.
I'm a no, but ideally I wish it was a yes.
Okay. I'm going to move us along a little bit, and then we can always come back to and discuss this. I don't want to ever shut down any further discussion, but next on the list was submit cost estimates for all of the associated public improvements subject to review and approval by the county contract engineer. Makes sense, everybody? Anybody discussion? Number 3, submit a completed subdivision improvements agreement subject to review and approval by the Lake County Land Use Council and the county attorney. All good. Include on the plat a certificate indicating where reception number the subdivision improvements recorded. 5, respond to and comply with the requirements from Excel. 6, comply with section 6.15.3 of lighting standards, including that direct lighting as well as the backscatter shall comply with dark sky principles to the extent possible, including the lighting on the building. Reduce the number of light poles and make them shorter. Agreed? Any? Okay. 7, the proposed signage plan is subject to review and approval by the Lake County Board of Adjustment. 8, the title of the plat should better relate the local geography rather than the state of Colorado. I think that's just their company name, but yeah. 9, all statements made in the application and by the applicant in hearing shall be considered as conditions of approval unless modified by other conditions of approval. And then 10, payment of all county contract review agency invoices will be paid. And 11, submittal of all civic construction documents received. All right, are there any other conditions that we want to consider adding to this list for either of the 3 files? Do we have any condition, or I'm sorry, do we have any concerns with them doing the minor subdivision into 2 parcels? Any concerns with them doing the drive-through, which would be the conditional use permit? And any concerns with the site plan as it's been laid out before us at this time? No others.
Heather, I know that we were talking about it a little bit about traffic, just if they could conduct another study, if we could add a condition about that.
My question is, so if they were to do one, let's say Friday, Sunday, even a Saturday in the summer, and it shows heavier congestion, what, if anything, does that change for us now, other than kind of being right about being heavy, like more congestion. Like I would love for it to do something like, what does it actually open up for us to do, as much as I want to see it kind of be a new procedure in the future, since it's literally night and day. We're talking about two different traffic flows. What would it do if it came back and said, you know, actually peak time, it's all red. It's not just red 15 years from now at peak business hour on a Friday, which actually happens to be a holiday, and it's peak because of holiday traffic.
Sure. So probably Paul will want to weigh in on this, but my initial thoughts are that that's going to change engineering's comments and review concerns more so than it affects us. Again, I'll just say that I think we're all really smart humans, but we have no idea what we're talking about when it comes to that side of engineering things based on that traffic study.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming that what would happen is that new traffic study would go to engineering for possibly different requirements and or review.
Because it seems like the site plan is outlaid to allow for the most amount of cars in their drive-through, from what I can tell. I'm not opposed to doing it. I think it sets a good precedent, but I also don't know if it's necessary for this application. I'm just wondering, where can we make something like that necessary in the future?
Yeah, there's a couple of things. Obviously, I feel like this happens every time we have a file come before us. We see some things that we need to adjust in our process. I think a good hard look at our sign code is important, although I will, just for the record, say that I think this applicant's doing a great job meeting what I would require for sign code, but I think our sign code needs some help, and I think some of these items need to be tagged for future consideration as far as adjusting our code, not even very majorly, to require that those traffic studies happen at the appropriate times of the year. I would also agree with you that I'm not sure that a much larger capacity traffic study occurring in the summer is going to change what the site plan looks like. I think their
Would
entrance
it
and
change parking? Would it change Taco Bell's parking requirement? That might be tough for the way that the site plan's laid out right now.
No, it wouldn't change their
Okay.
parking.
Okay.
it would just change their flow.
Okay.
I would think. And obviously, again, not being any kind of engineer, looking at the site plan, it's to me set up very beneficial for everybody. And I go back to, these guys aren't new, and they've been around the block a few times. They need it to work productively and well in that area. So I'm sure they've taken that into account as well. Could we require another traffic study? Sure. I'm just not sure what that's going to change as far as the.
Would that give us any benefit for the future? Would that be a document we as the county could ever go back to for any reason?
As far as this particular applicant? I mean, obviously, I'm not necessarily any kind of expert on that, but I would assume the only thing that it would do is if it points to any additional conditions that we should be putting on the file, it would allow us to do that at this time. But as far as going backwards later, there's not necessarily, I don't think, a lot of open window for that. As you referenced, like precedents, I'm not even sure necessarily that does that here, because we aren't requiring it right now. So if anything, we're putting an uncodified requirement on this applicant, instead of just saying, hey, we learned from this that we need to make sure future ones are following along this line.
Well, that's why it's always got to come back to what is and is not allowable.
Yeah.
I think as long as, I did have one quick question. So the site plan review, that we're saying, you know, no issues with, that is conditional on all like continuing conversations with the engineer, correct? And making
Yeah,
sure.
same
Okay.
conditions for each
Yeah.
file. Yep.
Yeah.
And so it would be that they have to,
It's like, it's
be
a big
happy.
asterisk after approved for me, based on what I read.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's what these conditions are. And I agree with that. I think the conditions that they meet all of those requirements, because as Paul's pointed out, there are plenty of them, which they've reviewed and said that they don't feel like there's any issue that they're going to be able to comply with them. But the asterisk is that they have to. And I think that the proposition I have is that I would like to add the additional language of that these conditions can all be met without any substantive changes to the applications as they've been presented tonight. Because if there are, then, you know, obviously it needs to come back to us, and that's a whole nother process that I'm sure the applicant doesn't want to go through, but will be required at that point. If there are big enough changes, and I guess if I had to define those would be that, for me personally, they would be substantive site plan changes that changed ingress and egress, changed parking, snow removal, drainage, any of those major requirements to fulfill the site plan criteria. And maybe the definition needs to just be that it changes any of the approval criteria for us, then it has to come back. But
I don't know about that.
if they can meet those requirements and stay within the approval criteria, then I would be comfortable moving forward. Any other thoughts on that from others?
No, that was the question I had, was if we're gonna define, we needed to define what substantive meant if we were gonna put that in. But I like your idea of just making it maybe a little less, I don't know, just
It's less
if
subjective.
it changes the conditions of approval, it's no longer approved.
Yeah.
Then we don't have to define a term.
Well, just for a clarification with staff, can we do one motion that approves all 3 files under the same approval criteria and same conditions? Or do we have to do one individually?
I think we're gonna have to do 3 separate conditional approval motions because all of the findings are not the same.
Right, the approval criteria is not necessarily the same. Okay. All right, well, do I have anybody that wants to read off a motion for 21-03 minor subdivision?
Can we put the additional conditions in the chat or something so we can just tap
Yeah,
them
it's,
on?
I was going to ask if you can put them on the screen.
Yes, let's see if I can do that.
I'm not great at reading out loud, but I'm happy to do the first one and get it over. I feel like I'm back in school and I'm anxious. So we're adding 10 and 11, 10, 11, and 12.
Yeah, sorry, I'm naming them 1 and 2.
It's okay.
I'm super helpful. And the last one was how's that? I'm sorry, they should be 10, 11, and 12.
Alrighty. Bear with me. I move the planning commission recommend approval of file number 2103 as minor subdivision of 1717 Popular Street. Are we trying to rename that? Do I
We'll
reference?
have to do that separately, but
Okay, do I have to start over?
nope, keep going.
Okay. Street to Lake County Board of County Commissioners, subject to the following conditions. 1, address and resolve the comments, shortcomings, and inconsistencies identified by the county contract engineer, subject to review and approval by the engineer. A, in the letter dated May 26, 2021 from SEH. Was this where the other letter goes?
And letter dated.
And letter dated June 11th, 2021.
Yep.
From SEH.
Mhm.
Thank you. B, in the applicant's project narrative from Harris Kocher Smith dated April 1st, 2021. C, on the applicant's proposed subdivision plat. D, in the applicant's drainage compliance letter by Harris Kocher Smith dated March 29th, 2021. E, on the 12-sheet site plan titled 1717 Popular Street. 2, subject cost estimates for all the associated public improvements subject to review and approval by the county contract engineer. 3, submit a completed subdivision improvements agreement subject to review and approval by the Lake County Land Use Council and the county attorney. 4, include on the plat or certificate indicating where reception number the subdivision improvements is recorded. 5, respond to / comply with the requirements from Excel. 6, comply with section 6.15.3 lighting standards, including that direct lighting as well as backscattered shall comply with dark sky principles to the extent possible, including the lighting on the building, reduce the number of light poles and make them shorter. 7, the proposed signage plan is subject to review and approval by the Lake County Board of Adjustment. 8, the title of the plat should better relate the local geography rather than the state of Colorado. 9, all statements made in the application and by the applicant in hearing shall be considered as conditions of approval unless modified by other conditions of approval. 10, payment of all county contract review agency invoices to be paid. 11, submittal of all civic construction documents. And 12, all conditions are met with no substantiative changes to the applications in which all approval criteria being met remains the same. And the findings, correct? And finding that 1, that as proposed, the proposed conditional use is consistent with the goals, objectives, and policies contained in Lake County Comprehensive Plan. 2, that as proposed, the proposed conditional use conforms to the requirements and provisions of this code. 3, that adequate public safety, transportation, and utility facilities will be available to serve the subject property while maintaining sufficient levels of service for existing development. 4, that the proposed conditional use is not likely to be detrimental to the public health, safety, or welfare of county residents or to cause hardship for neighboring persons. 5, that as proposed, the proposed conditional use is consistent with and in harmony with neighboring land uses and future intended land uses in the area. 6, that as proposed, the proposed conditional use will not likely result in overly intensive use of the land related to the surrounding land. 7, that as proposed, the proposed conditional use does not result in traffic congestion or hazards to vehicles or pedestrian traffic. 8, that as proposed, the proposed conditional use will not unnecessarily scar the land on which such use should or would be located. 9, that as proposed, the proposed site of conditional use is and will be free from natural or man-made hazards, or that such hazards can and will be adequately mitigated. Is that it?
That was it.
This last one, that the plat shall not be signed by the board nor.
That's not a
Okay,
finding.
thank you. Okay, thank you. Sorry. I think you're muted.
Thank you, Aaron. Do we have a second on that?
Second.
Thank you. All right, we have a motion. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, I'm gonna do.
I'd like to make a correction. On the very first one, in the letter dated May 26, 2021 from SEH and the response letter from HKS dated June 11.
Oh, okay.
Yes. I don't have to reread it, do I?
You have to reread the whole thing. No,
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. I just heard Aaron amend that number 1 is the letter for June 11th is from HKS. Okay, I'm gonna go through roll call on this vote if there's no discussion on this motion. Howard Tritz,
Aye.
Abby Dahlman,
Aye.
Bryce Ehrlich,
Aye.
Aaron Palin,
Aye.
and Lupe Bolidia,
Aye.
and Heather Lind, aye. All right, that one passes. 2 more to go, folks. Thanks, Aaron, for doing that one. Now we have the conditional use permit. Who wants to make a motion for that one? It's
I can take a stab.
21-04. Go for it.
I move the planning commission recommend approval of file 2104, a conditional use permit for a Taco Bell drive-through restaurant at 1717 Poplar Street to the Lake County Board of County Commissioners, subject to the following conditions. 1, address and resolve the comments, shortcomings, and inconsistencies identified by the county contract engineer, subject to review and approval by the engineer. A, in the letter dated May 26, 2021 from SEH and the response letter dated June 11th, 2021 from HKS. B, on the applicant's project narrative from Harris, Kocher, and Smith dated April 1st, 2021. C, on the applicant's proposed subdivision plat. D, on the applicant's drainage compliance letter by Harris, Kocher, and Smith dated March 29th, 2021. E, on the 12-sheet site plan titled 1717 Poplar Street. 2, submit costs for all the associated public improvements subject to review and approval by the county contract engineer. 3, submit a completed subdivision improvements agreement subject to review and approval by the Lake County Land Use Council and the county attorney. 4, include on the plat a certificate indicating where, reception number, the subdivision improvement is recorded. 5, respond to / comply with the requirements from Excel. 6, comply with section 6.15.3 lighting standards, including that direct lighting as well as backscatter shall comply with dark sky principles to the extent possible, including the lighting on the building. Reduce the number of light poles and make them shorter. 7, the proposed signage plan is subject to review and approval by the Lake County Board of Adjustment. 8, the title of the plat should better relate to the local geography rather than the state of Colorado. 9, all statements made in the application and by the applicant in hearing shall be considered as conditions of approval unless modified by other conditions of approval. 10, payment of all county contract review agencies invoices are to be paid. 11, submittal of all civic construction documents. And 12, all conditions are met with no substantive changes to the applications in which all approval criteria being met remains the same. And finding that, 1, that as proposed, the proposed conditional use is consistent with the goals, objectives, and policies contained in the Lake County Comprehensive Plan. 2, that as proposed, the proposed conditional use conforms to the requirements and provisions of this code. Says 2 again, but we'll go for 3. That adequate public safety, transportation, and utility facilities will be available to serve the subject property while maintaining sufficient levels of service for existing development. 4, that the proposed conditional use is not likely to be detrimental to the public health, safety, or welfare of county residents or to cause hardship for neighboring persons. 5, that as proposed, the proposed conditional use is consistent with and in harmony with neighboring land uses and future intended land uses in that area. 6, that as proposed, the proposed conditional use will not likely result in overly intensive use of the land relative to the surrounding land. 7, that as proposed, the proposed conditional use does not result in traffic congestion or hazards to vehicular or pedestrian traffic. 8, that as proposed, the proposed conditional use will not unnecessarily scar the land on which such use would be located. 9, that as proposed, the proposed site of the conditional use is and will be free from natural or man-made hazards, or that such hazards can and will be adequately mitigated.
Thank you, Bryce. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion on the motion?
Is it worth noting?
Okay, I'm gonna do roll call.
I was just gonna say, is it worth noting the building permit part here? Or not worrying about it? Thanks, Paul.
I'm
Never
sorry,
mind.
the what?
Ignore me, Paul answered.
Okay. Okay. I'll do any discussion on the motion. Okay, I'll do roll call. Howard Tritz,
Aye.
Abby Dahlman,
Aye.
Bryce Ehrlich,
Aye.
Karen Palin,
Aye.
Lupe Bobadilla.
Aye.
And Heather Lind, aye. Motion carries. Okay, one more. We have the motion for the site plan, which is 21-05.
Heather, I have to
Who wants to take
apologize. I would make that motion, but a printer is sitting in the box over here and is not hooked up. And I didn't memorize all of that. And if I tried to switch over to my other screen, I think I'd lose you. Is there somebody else who would do this?
I'm positive there is. Thank you, Howard.
I
You
can
got
do
somebody
it.
that'll read this.
I can do it for you all for somebody to so move and then second.
Perfect. Paul, thank you. Let's do that.
I move the planning commission that's the wrong one. I move the planning commission approve file number 20-05, a site plan review for Taco Bell at 1717 Poplar, subject to the following conditions. 1, address and resolve the comments, shortcomings, and inconsistencies identified by the county contract engineer, subject to review and approval by the engineer. A, in the letter dated May 26, 2021 from SEH, and the response letter dated June 11th from HKS. B, in the applicant's project narrative from Harris, Kocher, and Smith, dated April 1st, 2021. C, on the applicant's proposed subdivision plat. D, in the applicant's drainage compliance letter by Harris, Kocher, and Smith, dated March 29, 2021. And then E, on the 12-sheet site plan titled 1717 Poplar Street. 2, submit cost estimates for all of the associated public improvements subject to review and approval by the county contract engineer. 3, submit a completed subdivision improvements agreement subject to review and approval by the Lake County Land Use Council and the county attorney. Number 4, include on the plat a certificate indicating where reception number the subdivision improvements is recorded. Number 5, respond to / comply with the requirements from Excel. Number 6, comply with section 6.15.3 lighting standards, including that direct lighting as well as backscatter shall comply with dark sky principles to the extent possible, including the lighting on the building. Reduce the number of light poles and make them shorter. Number 7, the proposed signage plan is subject to review and approval by the Lake County Board of Adjustment. Number 8, the title of the plat should better relate to the local geography rather than the state of Colorado. 9, all statements made in the application and by the applicant in hearing shall be considered as conditions of approval unless modified by other conditions of approval. Number 10, payment of all county contract review agency invoices to be paid. Number 11, submittal of all civics construction documents. And 12, All conditions are met with no substantive changes to the applications in which all approval criteria are being met remains the same. And finding that, one, that as proposed, the proposed site plan is consistent with the goals and objectives and policies contained in the Lake County Comprehensive Plan. Two, that as proposed, the site plan conforms to the requirements and provisions of this code. Number three, that as proposed, the proposed site plan adequately addresses submittal requirement items. Number four, that the proposed site plan is consistent and in harmony with the neighboring land uses and future intended land uses in the area. And number five, the proposed site plan is substantially in compliance with the requirements and provisions of section 6.15 design criteria.
Thank you, Paul. Do I have a so moved?
So moved.
Thank you, Bryce. Do I have a second?
Second.
Great. Do I have any discussion on this motion? Okay. Howard Tritz,
Aye.
Abby Dahlman,
Aye.
Bryce Ehrlich,
Aye.
Aaron Palin,
Aye.
Lupe Bobadilla,
Aye.
and Heather Lind, aye. Awesome. Thank you, guys. That was a big file, and thanks for everybody sticking through it. Anybody have any questions before we accept a motion to adjourn? Great. What's our next 2 weeks from now? What are we looking at?
I think we're looking at,
Or it's not even, is it 2 weeks or is it next?
yeah, it's 2 weeks. It's on the 28th of June, and it'll be the Bryce. What is it going to be?
Oh, is it the Iron Mask?
Yeah, Iron Mask. Yeah, that's it. I think that's the only one
Okay.
on that date.
Do we need to, I think my only question I had is I know that our agenda gets a little bit packed in the summer, but to keep backcountry on the front burner and get it pushed forward, do we need to talk about whether everybody's open for a special meeting to regroup on that, or what are we, where is that at?
I think you're right, Heather. I think we'd want to let that die. We went too far on it, so I'm available for a special meeting.
Just to recap quick, I think we might need Anne. I will follow up with Anne tomorrow or the next day and get an update of just a quick reminder of what we need to have in place, because if I remember correctly, we need to have a couple of marketing pieces done, which I know that Aaron and I and Anne need to get together on, and we haven't yet. So before I make everybody do a special meeting, let me just check in with Anne and check where we're at as far as what we need to do to make this the next step. And I'll have staff send out an email to give us an update on what needs to happen with that, so that if we need to schedule a special meeting, we can do that. Does that work?
Yeah. Well, I'm also up for meeting with you and Anne, if you want to kind of give me like 2 weeks is probably realistic with just the workload of actual work to try to get some stuff put together. Because yeah, I think we were at the point where we were deciding to notice, and then we wanted to notice with some of that info, and then, you know, put together potentially that discussion night. I can do a video, like, so yeah, so I think that's where we're at. So I'm happy to be more proactive about it, especially if it moves us all along.
Yeah.
So what are we doing about the other alternate? Anything?
That's a great question. I think that we were supposed to schedule an interview time for all three, and I'm not sure, Anne's not on anymore, so I'll check in with her about that as well. To see whether, because I thought she was going to check in with them on dates and times and then send us a doodle poll, and I didn't see that come through. So I'll check in on the alternate position, as well as you know, trying to get a meeting set up with you and I to get that marketing stuff put together for backcountry. And then I think we could probably put together a special meeting for that.
I was just wondering what the possibility of bringing that up in 2 weeks would be, because if I remember right, we're kind of nearing the end of our portion, right? Like what we were putting together. And is there any way, if we only have one file to talk through in 2 weeks, we could add that as well, just to kind of keep moving forward on that?
Absolutely. I mean, I'm all for trying to figure out any way possible to keep things rolling. I think, you know, that's kind of been our demise in the past, and Howard can attest to this, that just like regular files end up taking over. So the stuff you're trying to work on in the background just never gets done, which increases our workload, you know, if we're gonna add special meetings and stuff to it. But I feel like this group's a little bit open to that, to try to get things done. So, and we keep, every time we go through this, we have a new thing to add to our task of things, such as a sign code look at and things like that. So we definitely have a growing list of items that this group needs to look at. I would almost be interested in seeing if we wanted to talk about a third monthly standing meeting that's reserved work session items, so that it can be things like, right now it would be backcountry, it could be looking at the comp plan, it could be looking at sign code, you know, those kinds of things, but it would be reserved as work session only and not for files. If people are open to that third meeting a month, I think that could be super beneficial to us, especially in these kind of crazy growing times. So if you guys are up for that, maybe I'll ask staff to send us out kind of an email of what makes the most sense for that. Is it still another Monday night? Is it a different night of the week throughout the month? But I do think that third night, if we just reserved that for work session stuff, we could possibly keep things moving forward.
Well, and I think we're at such a pivotal point with construction that it kind of.
When can we get meeting in person instead of Zoom?
Yeah, I like that idea too.
I was just thinking how I haven't like met any of you.
We're not even gonna know each other when we walk into our room. I mean, I think we're allowed to start doing it, right, Paul? I think it's the way I understand it.
I think that's a question that the Board of County Commissioners should answer.
Okay.
And I raised it to them actually in March. I think I raised it to them, and they didn't want to entertain changing status quo.
Yeah. I mean, I'll admit that there's a convenience factor to not having to get somewhere and also be available for the meeting. I get that. And perhaps moving forward, I know that the county did a special meeting not too long ago where they had some people in person and some people over Zoom. It wasn't necessarily very seamless, mind you, but I just wonder if that's going to be the way that we move this forward. It could be a way to get more public involvement if we were able to figure out how to have public meetings that also allowed for some sort of virtual attendance as well. But I will make it a note here that I need to follow up with Anne on several of these issues and see what we can iron out for you guys and send you an update email this week on those things.
Thank you.
Yeah. Cool. Well, thank you guys all for your participation tonight. And anybody have any other questions before they want a motion to adjourn?
The motion to adjourn.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Have a great night, everyone.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.